My wife, Willow, went through 10 months of pregnancy and nearly died in childbirth, before finally giving birth to quadruplets. Everyone said I was blessed. A perfect family, sons and a daughter, a complete household, the ultimate winner in life. But the moment I turned around, I asked Willow for a divorce. And aside from my daughter, I did not want a single one of the children. Willow exploded in fury, cursing me for abandoning my wife and children, saying I was unworthy of being a father. Unworthy of being a father. In my previous life, I was simply too stupid. That was why I ended up raising someone else's sons for them. In the end, they joined forces and destroyed my entire family, leaving me with nothing. Those 3 boys were never my biological children. During the IVF procedure, Willow secretly swapped the fertilized embryos, but what she did not know was this: the 3 sons she painstakingly schemed to give birth to did not share a single drop of blood with her either. Chapter 1. Son, Willow said you want a divorce. My mother's anxious voice came from the other end of the phone. Then, what about the 4 children? What are you planning to do? I'm taking one of them with me, I replied. My tone was calm, but the fist clenched at my side exposed the storm raging in my heart. My mother sounded slightly relieved. Taking one is still better than nothing. Bring one of the boys back with you. In the future, he can help carry the Wong family business, she continued. Elias is steady and mature. Ivan is smart. Santino may be mischievous, but he's sweet with words. So which one are you choosing? I'm choosing Emma. The other end of the line fell silent instantly. A full 3 seconds passed before my mother's voice shot up in disbelief. Are you crazy? That little girl was raised at the old family estate since she was born. She's not even close to you. I slowly closed my eyes. How could I not understand my mother's concerns? Emma weighed barely 3 pounds at birth. The very day she was discharged from the hospital, Willow's mother took her away because of her fragile health and sent her elsewhere to recover. She was only brought back last month. Naturally, our bond could not compare to the one I had with my 3 sons. But only I knew the truth. The only person in this world who had ever sincerely loved me was this little daughter of mine. After my death in my previous life, she stood before my gravestone clutching crumpled New Year's money in her tiny hands, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Daddy, I'll give you all my money, please don't die. Okay. The family portrait hanging in the living room had already faded slightly from years of sunlight. In the photo, Willow held the 3 boys with a gentle smile on her face, while Emma, sitting in my arms, timidly tugged at my sleeve, barely showing any smile at all. I picked up a pair of scissors. Snip. The photograph was cut cleanly down the middle. One half showed Willow and the 3 boys. The other half showed me and my daughter. I've made up my mind. My voice was quiet, but every word landed with finality. Still, my mother sighed over the phone. You should really think the divorce through again. Back then, your relationship was so good. Do you remember when Willow got pregnant with the quadruplets? You lost over 20 pounds taking care of her. How can years of love just disappear overnight? I forced a smile, bitterness spreading through my chest. Love? I once thought we truly had it. Our engagement had been arranged since childhood. We grew up together as childhood sweethearts. Even knowing she had always carried feelings for Makoto in her heart, I still married her. When she was pregnant with the quadruplets, the slightest movement from her at night would wake me instantly. I massaged her back, cared for her tirelessly, and stayed constantly by her side. After the children were born, I became even busier. Willow was weak after childbirth, and I was afraid she would overexert herself. So I took on everything alone, staying up late to soothe the babies to sleep, changing diapers, personally handling every little thing. And yet later, my eldest son, Elias Wong, was only 7 when he began frowning and saying, "Dad, stop bothering Mom." My second son, Ivan Wong, held up advanced math problems gifted by Makoto Ito and innocently asked, "Why does Uncle Ito know more than you?" My third son, Santino Wong, was the most manipulative of them all. After stealing Emma's snacks, he would shamelessly blame her instead. "Little sister's crying again. She just wants Mom to scold you." Only my youngest daughter, Emma, the little girl constantly bullied by her brothers, would look up at me with her bright dark eyes and say softly, "Daddy looks the most handsome when he smiles." Chapter 2. In my previous life, on the quadruplets' 7th birthday, Willow threw a divorce agreement in front of me. Because of the children, I refused to sign no matter what. I kept telling myself to wait a little longer. Once the children grew older, everything would eventually get better. But what I got in return was Willow taking the 3 boys overseas and holding a beach wedding with Makoto that went viral across the internet. If Emma had not secretly told me, I would have remained completely in the dark. I rushed there like a madman, only to see Willow and Makoto passionately kissing before a priest, and my 3 sons were clapping excitedly. Congratulations to Mommy and Uncle Ito. From now on, Uncle Ito is our daddy. They even patted their chests proudly and promised, Don't worry, Mom. We'll keep that bad dad busy at home and never let him bother you guys. The 5 of them stood beneath the sunlight, their expressions oddly similar, looking intimate like a real family. At that moment, my entire world collapsed. I charged forward, wanting to demand an explanation, but a speeding car slammed into me and sent me flying. In the instant my body was thrown into the air, I saw Willow and the 3 boys standing at the other end of the beach, not a trace of emotion in their eyes. Less than half a year after my death, Emma fell gravely ill because she missed me too much. In the end, while softly calling out "Daddy" in her sleep, she closed her eyes forever. So I said, "Mom, please stop trying to persuade me. I've already made my decision." I took a deep breath, my voice firmer than ever. After the divorce, Emma will be my only child and the sole heir to the Wong family. After a pause, I added, "The divorce process will take a month. Once it's finalized, I'll take Emma to England to join you." After hanging up the phone, I finally felt the enormous weight crushing my chest disappear, leaving my whole body lighter. Creak, the bedroom door slowly opened. Emma stood at the doorway hugging a stuffed doll, her soft little voice filled with anticipation. "Daddy, when is the birthday party starting?" "Good girl, Emma. Daddy's coming downstairs now." My voice unconsciously softened. Gifts were piled in the corner. A rare collector's encyclopedia for Elias, a limited edition figurine for Ivan, an autographed basketball from a star player for Santino, and the doll Emma had been longing for. I had prepared these according to the same list from my previous life, only this time, I was not doing it so they could experience some so-called fatherly love. The moment I reached the staircase landing, the conversation from the living room pierced into my ears like needles. "Willow, are you really divorcing him for me?" Makoto's voice was filled with concern. "I feel heartbroken no matter which child he takes away. And besides, he loves you so much. What if he refuses to divorce you?" Willow's voice was icy cold. If he refuses to sign, then I'll just go overseas and marry you there. Uncle Ito, don't worry." That was Ivan's voice. "I'm definitely not going with that bad dad." "Me neither," Elias immediately agreed. Santino excitedly chimed in. "Mommy, can we go overseas and be flower boys at your wedding?" My nails dug deep into my palms until they went numb with pain. Even though I had already witnessed their betrayal in my previous life, hearing it again still made my chest tighten so painfully I could barely breathe. I took a deep breath and walked out from around the corner with a cold expression. "The birthday party is about to begin." Makoto jumped in fright and hurriedly said, "Mr. Wong, I know you don't welcome me here. I'll leave right away." But as he brushed past me, he suddenly stumbled. The next second, he violently grabbed onto me and dragged me toward the staircase. Crack! I saw Willow and the 4 children's expressions change drastically. At first, she reached her hand toward me, but the moment she heard Makoto's muffled groan, her hand abruptly changed direction, and she rushed over to support him instead. The world spun violently around me. An explosive pain shot through my back as it slammed against the stairs. Instantly, I could no longer move, and my vision gradually blurred. In my daze, I watched Willow help Makoto rush out the door while the 3 boys followed close behind. Not one of them looked back at me. Only Emma stumbled desperately toward me, throwing herself beside me as tears streamed down her face. "Daddy, wake up, please. Emma is scared." Chapter 3. Not far away. The car had already sped off into the distance. The 3 boys remained where they were, anxiously staring after it. Ivan stood on tiptoe and craned his neck. "Will Uncle Ito be okay?" Elias sounded irritated. "I really want to go check on him. Mom insisted we'd only get in the way." Santino suddenly frowned in confusion. Why is Emma crying?" Only then did he notice me collapsed in the corner. The 3 boys finally seemed to remember my existence and hurried over, pushing Emma aside. "Dad, are you okay?" Ivan reached out to pull me up. "I'll take you to the hospital." Elias's eyes flickered guiltily. "Sorry, Dad. We were just too panicked earlier and mistook the situation." "Don't blame us," Santino quickly interrupted. "Dad, we'll have the driver take you to the hospital." All 3 spoke at once. "Yeah, to the hospital." But the next second, "Big brothers, I already called an ambulance." Emma pressed her pale lips together and pointed at the smartwatch on her wrist. The boys' expressions darkened instantly. Elias immediately said, "An ambulance is too slow. I'll go get the driver." I lifted my eyelids slightly and saw the urgency hidden in their eyes. A chill spread through my heart. They were not worried about me at all. They simply wanted to get to the hospital to see Makoto. A moment later, the 3 boys dragged the driver over. "Driver uncle, Daddy's over there." "We're going too." "No." With the driver's support, I struggled to stand. "You're all staying home." Ivan was the first to protest. "How can we, Dad? We want to take care of you. You're too young." I cut him off impatiently. "You wouldn't be able to help anyway." The 3 boys lowered their heads in disappointment. Only then did Emma step forward and gently hug my arm. Daddy, hurry and go. Emma will stay home and wait obediently for you to come back. I stroked my daughter's head, without letting the driver follow me. I got into the ambulance alone. The doctor frowned as he examined the scans. Multiple soft tissue injuries and a mild concussion. You'll need to stay in the hospital for observation for 2 days. During those 2 days, neither Willow, Lou nor the 3 boys even made a single phone call to ask how I was doing. Only Emma called every day without fail, her childish voice softly asking if I was still hurting and reminding me to eat properly. That evening, the hospital room door was not fully closed, and the nurse's casual conversation drifted inside. The Miss Lou in the VIP ward treats Mr. Ito so well. I heard that after her car accident years ago, Mr. Ito donated blood to save her. No wonder she fell in love with him at first sight. My eyes widened instantly. Back then, the person who risked his life dragging Willow out of the wrecked car was me. The one who donated 1,000 milliliters of blood and nearly fainted afterward was also me. So how had all that credit somehow become Makoto's? I closed my eyes, forcing down the storm of emotions surging inside me. Forget it. Since I had already decided to leave in this life, what was the point of bringing up old history now? The day I was discharged from the hospital, I passed by the VIP ward and heard a familiar voice drifting out. Through the crack in the door, I saw Willow holding a bowl of chicken soup, carefully blowing on each spoonful before feeding it to Makoto Ito. The tenderness in her eyes was enough to drown someone. Meanwhile, my 3 sons hovered attentively around his bedside. Makoto sighed lightly. It's only a small scrape. Look how worried all of you are. Mr. Wong was hurt pretty badly too. Shouldn't you go check on him? Willow never stopped feeding him the soup, her tone cold. He brought it on himself. Who told him to deliberately trip you? Elias nodded immediately. Exactly. He spends every day obsessing over us and Mom. It's seriously so annoying. Ivan curled his lips in disdain. There are obviously servants at home, but he insists on doing all the work himself. Such a pathetic workaholic. Santino quickly chimed in. Uncle Ito is completely different. He's handsome and he's a famous designer too. He's way better than Dad. Satisfaction flashed through Makoto's eyes, though he pretended to advise them kindly. You absolutely mustn't say those things in front of your father. He'll be upset. Willow shook her head helplessly. You're just too kind-hearted. Then she said coldly. Let him stew for a few days and reflect on himself first. Later, I'll make him come apologize to you. Standing outside the door, my fists clenched so tightly they trembled. So all these years of hard work and sacrifice meant nothing to them. In their eyes, I was just a nuisance, not even as useful as a servant. I truly did need to reflect on myself, reflect on how I could have been so blind as to give my sincere heart to a pack of heartless wolves. Chapter 4. After returning home, I immediately began packing my luggage. The cabinet full of luxury watches and designer goods was all bundled up and sent off to a second-hand dealer. Every single one of them had been gifts from Willow. In my previous life, I treasured them like priceless possessions. Now, they only felt ironic. Our premarital assets had long been notarized, so there was no need for division. As long as I transferred my real estate holdings into a trust company, I would have nothing left tying me down. When I opened the wardrobe and saw the rows of neatly pressed women's and children's clothing, I froze for a moment. Every piece in there had been carefully selected by me according to the preferences of Willow and the children. I had never once gotten the sizes or fabrics wrong. As for my own clothes, there were only a handful, squeezed into the deepest corner of the closet. Just like me in this household. Optional, replaceable, easily ignored. I closed the wardrobe door and turned toward my daughter's room. Emma was sitting at the piano practicing. Her tiny back was perfectly straight, but the melody she played carried a sorrow far beyond her age. I remembered how Willow always claimed, taking a daughter out is inconvenient, yet unfailingly took the 3 boys horseback riding every single week. It felt as though countless tiny needles were stabbing into my chest. Emma, stop practicing for now. Daddy's taking you out to buy a new dress. Holding my daughter's cool little hand, I brought her straight to the largest shopping center in H City. Hair styling, facial grooming, new clothes, professional makeup. After the entire makeover process, the person reflected in the mirror looked completely different. My already refined features appeared even sharper under the makeup, while the tailored suit perfectly highlighted my tall, well-built figure. Beside me, Emma twirled happily in her fluffy princess dress, her little cheeks flushed pink. Daddy looks like a prince. Then our Emma must be a little princess. I pinched her cheek gently. Come on, Daddy's taking you to the revolving restaurant on the top floor for something delicious. The moment we stepped into the restaurant, several familiar figures crashed into my sight. Willow, together with Makoto and the 3 boys, was seated by the window. The instant she saw me, Willow's hand holding the knife and fork froze midair. When her gaze collided with mine, a flash of amazement uncontrollably flickered through her eyes. Dad. The 3 boys spoke first. their faces full of shock. Willow said nothing, but her eyes seemed glued to me, tracing from my sharp jawline down to my broad chest before she abruptly looked away. Makoto secretly dug his fingernails into his palm, though a fake smile remained on his face. Mr. Wong, what a coincidence. Don't tell me you've been stalking us. Exactly, Elias immediately echoed, his young face full of hostility. Only then did Willow snap out of it. A layer of frost covered her face, though her voice carried panic she herself did not notice. We're already getting divorced. What exactly do you want now? The moment the words left her mouth, she seemed to realize they sounded too harsh. Clearing her throat, she awkwardly added, "Don't tell me, you think dressing up like this will change my mind?" I pulled the frightened Emma into my arms and gently patted her back to comfort her. When I looked up again, my eyes had already turned ice cold. Who would waste time stalking you? I simply brought my daughter out for a meal. It's just a coincidence. With that, I turned toward the empty seats nearby, not even bothering to spare them another glance. Yet Willow's eyes seemed hooked to me, repeatedly drifting toward our table. Even when Makoto spoke to her, she answered absent-mindedly. Makoto clearly noticed everything. Picking up his wineglass, he stood and walked over to my table. Mr. Wong, I truly feel terrible about what happened the other day. I accidentally fell and caused you to get hurt badly enough to be hospitalized. Please allow this glass of wine to serve as my apology. Before he even finished speaking, his wrist suddenly tilted. Splash! The dark red wine poured directly across my clothes. Daddy! Emma cried out in alarm and rushed toward me. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. Makoto hurriedly grabbed several napkins, but when he leaned close beside me, he lowered his voice so only the two of us could hear. Only then did the viciousness beneath his smile reveal itself. I only realized today that your little daughter is actually quite pretty. Willow already agreed that once she's older, she'll be sent back to my hometown to become my nephew's child bride. Chapter 5. My pupils contracted violently, and an icy chill shot from the soles of my feet straight to the top of my head. Without even thinking, I raised my hand and shoved Makoto away, as if he had expected it all along. Makoto staggered backward directly into a serving cart. A pot of boiling hot soup tipped over instantly, splashing across his arm. Ah! He cried out in pain, tears immediately filling his eyes. Makoto! Willow rushed over in only a few steps. The moment she saw the burn on his arm rapidly swelling red, she hurriedly helped him up. I'm taking you to the hospital right now. My mind was still reeling from the words child bride. Seeing her about to leave, I immediately grabbed her arm. Is what Makoto said true? You're planning to send Emma away to become his nephew's child bride? Willow impatiently shook my hand off. Emma is weak and sickly. The Ito family being willing to take her is already a blessing for her. She glanced at the surrounding crowd gathering to watch the drama, her brows tightening further. Do you really have to make such a scene in public? Look at yourself. Do you even act like a father anymore? Can't you be more mature? I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood before finally forcing the words out between clenched teeth. I'm Emma's biological father. How could you decide something this huge without discussing it with me first? I looked up at her, the light in my eyes fading little by little. Willow. I will never let you get your way. Seeing the complete darkness settling into my gaze, Willow suddenly felt inexplicably irritated. She frowned tightly, and even her tone unconsciously softened slightly. What exactly do you mean by that? Word by word, I replied. You promised me that after the divorce, I could take one child with me, so no matter what happens, I'm taking Emma. Dad, then, does that mean you don't want us anymore? The three boys suddenly spoke in unison. Tears appeared instantly on their faces, looking pitiful as though they had suffered an unbearable injustice. The words at the tip of my tongue were completely blocked by their performance. Willow looked impatient, though her fingers curled slightly at her side. Who you choose is your freedom. Besides, there's no rush to decide right now. After a pause, she deliberately tightened her arms around Makoto, her tone carrying even more disdain. You don't need to throw this little tantrum here. When we officially finalize the divorce, the outcome will naturally become clear. Looking at the certainty in her eyes, the certainty that I was merely throwing a jealous fit, I only felt an overwhelming exhaustion spread through every inch of my body. Even if I tore my heart out and placed it in front of her, she would only think it was another trick to gain attention. I took a deep breath. At last, the question buried in my heart for years finally broke free. If the person who saved you back then had been me, would you still treat me like this? Without even turning her head, Willow replied coldly. There are no what-ifs. The one I love is Makoto. It has nothing to do with who saved my life. Move aside. I need to take Makoto to the hospital first. She shoved past me and hurried away while supporting Makoto. Over the next few days, the three boys suddenly seemed to become completely different people, constantly trying to flatter me in various ways. Elias brought me chicken soup, only to accidentally spill it all over the contracts I had just organized. Ivan kindly offered to peel an apple for me, yet the knife somehow nearly sliced into my hand. Santino repeatedly barged into my video conferences singing loudly, leaving me with splitting headaches. I watched everything coldly. In my previous life, I had been deceived by these so-called childish accidents. I always convinced myself that they were still young and would become sensible once they grew older. Only after being pushed into the abyss did I finally understand. Some people's nature is rotten from the very core. That day, while searching for evidence to use during the divorce, I opened the living room security footage. What I saw on the screen instantly caused my fingers to tighten. The three boys sat huddled together on the carpet, their little heads pressed close as they whispered conspiratorially. Their childish faces were filled with calculation far beyond their age. Ivan frowned and whispered, "Do you think Dad suspects we're doing all this on purpose?" "How could he?" Elias rolled his eyes. "We're his biological sons. Uncle Ito said everything will definitely work out if we listen to him." Ivan suddenly lowered his voice even further. "Uncle Ito's nephew is mentally disabled. A fortune teller said only Emma's fate can suppress his bad luck. Once Emma is gone, Dad will have no choice but to pick one of us." Santino looked unwilling. "But what if Dad actually chooses one of us? I don't want to go with him." "You idiot." Elias smacked him lightly on the head. "Even if he picks one of us, after a while we'll just cry to Mom and say he hits us and refuses to feed us. Mom will definitely take us back immediately. That way, we can keep living together forever with Mom and Uncle Ito." Chapter 6. Watching the three boys excitedly high-five each other on the screen, I could not help but laugh out loud. They truly would never change, but now was not the time to expose them. Otherwise, with how spoiled and vicious they had become, there was no guarantee they would not turn around and hurt Emma instead. In the surveillance footage, the boys finally dispersed reluctantly, their footsteps heading toward my room. I took a deep breath, suppressing the emotion surging inside me, and quietly waited for them to enter. Elias was the first to rush in. His darting eyes were filled with deliberately exaggerated pleading. "Dad, staying at home is so boring. Can you come horseback riding with us?" He tugged on my sleeve as he spoke. "You haven't played with us in such a long time." Looking at the barely concealed eagerness in their eyes, I sneered inwardly. No one understood sons better than their father. They did not want to go horseback riding at all. What they really wanted was to see Willow and Makoto, who were currently out on a date at the ranch. I glanced toward the neighboring room. Emma was sleeping soundly while hugging her stuffed doll. After carefully instructing the nanny to watch over her, I finally left the house with the three boys. The ranch had been a birthday gift from Willow when the children turned 3 years old. It had never been open to outsiders. After changing into riding clothes and stepping into the stable grounds, I immediately spotted Willow in the distance holding the reins of a chestnut horse while Makoto sat atop it, her hand hovering protectively near his waist. Willow looked up at me, her gaze clouded like mist. She took the initiative to walk over, but when she noticed the safety charm tied around my riding crop, she paused slightly. I had obtained that charm years ago. Back then, I always complained it looked tacky, yet I still kept it hanging in my study all these years. Willow spoke first. "Since you already agreed to the divorce, stop coming here to make things difficult, even if you regret it now." I cut her off coldly. "You're overthinking things, Miss Liu." Makoto curled his lips into a smile, though he still pretended to mediate kindly. "Willow, don't say that. Mr. Wang is still the father of the 4 children. Even if your relationship has come to an end, there should still be some affection left between you." Before he could finish speaking, the three boys suddenly crowded around me noisily. "Dad, don't be sad. You still have us. We love Dad the most. We'll stay with you forever in the future." Their little faces were tilted upward innocently, yet there was not a trace of genuine concern in their eyes. Instead, it felt more like they were putting on a performance for someone to watch. I had no interest in entertaining this ridiculous act. Just as I turned to leave, Elias grabbed my wrist tightly. "Dad, do you remember when you taught me how to ride lightning? You said you'd help me win the horseback riding championship." A sharp pain pierced through my chest. That had happened last year. At the time, I had smiled and promised I would definitely be there, but on the day of the competition, I was burning with a high fever and bedridden. Meanwhile, Willow took the three boys to support Makoto's design exhibition without even bothering to call me once. Willow's gaze fell on the sleeve Elias was clutching. Her fingers curled slightly, and she suddenly spoke in a low voice. "That's enough." She looked at me, a subtle tension hidden in her eyes. "You brought the children all the way here today. What exactly are you trying to do?" Before I could respond, Santino tilted his face upward and asked impatiently, "Dad, are you really divorcing Mom? And are you really only taking Emma with you?" Looking at the barely concealed urgency on their faces, the corner of my lips slowly lifted, deliberately dragging out my words. I replied, "Of course." Chapter 7. I replied, "Of course we'll only know the answer on the day the divorce is finalized." I deliberately sighed as if conflicted. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the three boys' faces instantly fall. Even Willow and Makoto's expressions darkened noticeably. For some reason, the sight brought a faint sense of satisfaction to my heart. In my previous life, I had been deceived by all of them together, trapped inside a cage until every last bit of life in me had been drained away. Compared to that, this tiny bit of anxiety they were feeling now was nothing more than interest on the debt. Soon, the staff led over my horse, Soul. The pure white Arabian horse proudly tossed its head, its silver mane glimmering beneath the sunlight. The moment it stopped in front of me, it affectionately rubbed against my palm. Makoto's eyes immediately lit up with envy. What a beautiful horse. I wish I had a purebred like this too. Before he even finished speaking, he directly reached out to touch Soul's neck. My expression darkened instantly. Soul had been specially brought back from overseas by my father before his death. Its temperament was extremely fierce. Other than me and the caretakers who had raised it for years, anyone who approached too closely would immediately provoke its hostility. Nay. Sure enough, Soul suddenly raised its front hoof high into the air, hot warning breath spraying from its nostrils. Makoto, careful. Reacting quickly, Willow immediately yanked Makoto behind her protectively, her face turning livid. I had already rushed forward and grabbed Soul's bridle, soothing him in a low voice. Soul, it's okay now. Easy, good boy. The horse gradually calmed down, but Soul still pawed the ground restlessly, staring fixedly in Makoto's direction. Makoto's face had turned deathly pale from fright, his body trembling non-stop. That beast actually dared to hurt someone. Willow's fury exploded instantly. She waved sharply toward the staff. Drag this crazy horse straight to the slaughterhouse. Try touching him and see what happens. I spun around abruptly, my eyes bloodshot red. The hand gripping my riding crop trembled violently. Willow, this horse is the last thing my father left me. If you want to touch him, you'll have to step over my dead body first. The entire atmosphere froze. It was the first time Willow had ever seen me like this. For some reason, her chest tightened slightly. Her lips parted as though she wanted to say something else. But before she could speak, Makoto gently tugged on her sleeve beside her. Willow, forget it. I'm not hurt. Don't ruin the harmony between husband and wife because of me. Harmony between husband and wife. Willow let out a cold laugh. Her gaze swept over my tightly pressed lips, her tone rigid and icy. He's not worthy of talking about harmony. Even so, the hand she had raised toward the staff slowly lowered in the end. The three boys immediately crowded around Makoto. Santino clenched his fists angrily at Soul. It's all your fault. You scared Uncle Ito. Looking at their righteous outrage, I only found it absurd. Just minutes ago, these same children had been clinging to my arm saying, Dad, we'll always protect you. And now, in the blink of an eye, they were willing to turn against everything belonging to me for the sake of an outsider. Dad, Mom's just too angry right now. Elias recovered the fastest. He tugged gently on my sleeve, piling a flattering smile onto his face. Why don't we have the staff take Soul back to the stable first? Inside, he was already calculating. As long as the horse was taken away, Dad would stop arguing with Mom, and Uncle Ito could continue buying them the newest Transformers toys. Looking at the different schemes hidden behind each of my son's childish faces, something inside my heart twisted painfully. They were my own flesh and blood, yet the calculation in their eyes chilled me even more deeply than Willow's indifference ever had. Just as I was about to lead Soul back to the stable myself, Makoto suddenly stopped me. Mr. Wong, I have something to discuss with you. After sending Willow away to fetch water, the timid expression on Makoto's face vanished instantly. What remained in his eyes was naked arrogance. I've taken a liking to this horse. Name your price. Not for sale. My voice remained completely calm. Makoto's expression darkened with anger. Don't refuse a favor when it's handed to you. He pulled out a thin steel needle from his pocket and casually twirled it between his fingers. You really think Willow cares about you? She protected me just now because you don't know your place the way I do. If you know what's good for you, hand the horse over. Otherwise, I'll make her turn this beast into minced meat, and then I'll let her personally watch how you accidentally injured me. Chapter 8. My heart suddenly sank. I remembered Willow's cold words from earlier. He's not worthy of talking about harmony. I remembered the excitement on my son's faces as they surrounded Makoto Ito, shouting that Uncle Ito was the best. An icy chill crawled up from the soles of my feet. Before I could even react, Makoto took advantage of my distraction and viciously stabbed the steel needle into Soul's side. Nay. Soul cried out in pain and instantly went berserk. It hurts. Makoto screamed shrilly after being kicked by Soul, curling up on the ground in agony. Seeing the crazed horse about to trample him, I acted without hesitation. Leaping onto the saddle, I yanked hard on the reins. Soul, calm down. George, are you insane? Willow's furious scream exploded behind me. She rushed forward, the riding crop in her hand slicing through the air as she lashed it violently across Soul's body. Are you trying to get Makoto killed? The whip struck brutally hard. Soul completely lost control, rearing and bucking wildly in place. I was nearly thrown off the horse, gripping the reins desperately without daring to loosen my hold even slightly. Watching me sway precariously atop the horse, a flash of panic crossed Willow's eyes. Instinctively, she rushed forward 2 steps, but Makoto's crying abruptly stopped her. At that exact moment, the stable staff finally arrived. Using specialized ropes, they quickly restrained Soul while a syringe filled with tranquilizer plunged into his neck. Thud. Soul collapsed heavily to the ground. Foam spilled from the corners of his mouth as his body convulsed uncontrollably. I rolled off the horse and had barely regained my footing when I heard Makoto sobbing weakly in Willow's arms. "Willow, don't blame Mr. Wong. He's just too jealous of me." "I don't blame him." As he spoke, his head tilted sideways, and he fainted dramatically. Willow checked his breathing. The moment she confirmed he was still alive, the fury in her eyes reignited as she glared at me with venomous hatred. "Makoto is already in this condition, yet he's still defending you. Is your heart really that narrow-minded? Someone come and lock Mr. Wong in the confinement room to reflect on himself without my permission." Before she could finish speaking, a sudden commotion erupted from the stable area. I instinctively turned toward the noise. The moment I saw what was happening, my expression changed drastically. The disturbance grew closer and closer. Elias, Ivan, and Santino were each riding ponies at full speed, charging wildly toward us. "Dad, save us!" The boys' faces were filled with terror as they galloped toward me, their tiny bodies wobbling dangerously atop the horses. My heart clenched violently, but as they got closer, I caught the fleeting smirk flashing across their lips. It was the smile of a scheme succeeding. By the time I realized the truth, it was already too late. Crunch. Elias's pony reached me first. The horse's hoof crashed directly into my chest with terrifying force. Crack. The sharp sound of bones shattering exploded alongside unbearable agony as my body was violently thrown backward onto the grass. Before I could recover, Ivan and Santino's ponies charged over me one after another. Their hoofs trampled mercilessly across my body. I lay sprawled on the bright green lawn, blood pouring from my mouth in great choking gulps, staining the grass crimson beneath me. My vision gradually blurred. Even the sound of the wind grew distant. In my haze, I heard Willow's voice trembling with panic she herself did not seem aware of. "You 3 went too far. No matter what, George is still your father." Makoto immediately interrupted her gently. "They're still children. What could they possibly understand? I know they only wanted to defend me, but if they had gotten hurt themselves, I would have been heartbroken. We just couldn't stand seeing him bully you." Elias's voice was filled with hatred completely inappropriate for a child his age. "If we didn't teach him a lesson, we'd never feel satisfied. Uncle Ito, we already discussed everything beforehand." Ivan's tone was cold as ice, sounding nothing like a little boy. "Pretending to deal with this man every day is too troublesome. It's better if he's seriously injured and hospitalized. Then he won't be such an eyesore, and we'll finally get some peace for a while." Santino immediately added on, his childish voice carrying an eerie certainty. "And we overheard you talking with Mommy. The 3 of us only exist because Mommy implanted embryos made from you and her into her womb. Only Emma is actually his biological child. We belong with Mommy and Uncle Ito. We're the real family." Chapter 9. Buzz. My mind went completely blank. Every mystery that had haunted me for years finally had an answer. No wonder Willow suddenly insisted on IVF even though their married life had been perfectly normal. No wonder, among the quadruplets, only Emma had been treated coldly since childhood. No wonder Willow could so heartlessly send Emma away to become a sacrificial bride for a fool. No wonder those 3 sons were so cruel to me, their biological father. Yet Southwest naturally close to Makoto like a true family. So all along, Emma and I were the real outsiders in this household. I wanted to struggle to my feet and demand answers, but my heavily injured body could not even move a finger. The agony throughout my body intertwined with the hatred surging inside my heart, almost tearing me apart. In the end, my vision went black, and I sank completely into darkness. I did not know how much time had passed before I awoke from the pain. My body was wrapped in bandages like a mummy as I lay in a hospital bed. The pain radiating from every inch of me reminded me clearly, none of it had been a dream. I had heard correctly. The 3 sons I had painstakingly raised were truly not my flesh and blood. At that moment, the hospital room door was gently pushed open. The 3 boys walked in with concerned smiles on their faces. "Dad, you're awake. That's wonderful." Elias was the first to throw himself toward the bed. His small body slammed heavily into me, causing the wounds that had only just begun healing to split open again. Cold sweat instantly drenched my body from the pain. "I'm sorry, Dad. It's all our fault. If it weren't for us, you wouldn't have gotten hurt so badly." Meanwhile, Ivan casually opened the gift box in his hands and pulled out a wind-up frog toy. Without hesitation, he placed it directly on my chest and twisted the spring. making the frog hop noisily across my injuries. We specially made gifts to apologize to you. A dull pain spread through my chest, and I nearly coughed up blood again. Dad, don't worry about recovering. We'll take good care of little sister. As Santino spoke, he deliberately plopped himself down onto my right arm, which was encased in plaster. The piercing pain nearly blacked out my vision. Watching their hypocritical performance, I did not even have the strength left to sneer. I could only allow them to torment me under the guise of concern. Under the relentless torture hidden beneath their fake care, my vision darkened once again. To no one's surprise, I fainted. When I woke again, 3 days had already passed. The hospital lights were so bright they forced me to squint. The pain throughout my body had not lessened in the slightest. Even the smallest movement caused waves of stabbing agony to spread through me. But at least I was still alive, and as long as I was alive, there was still hope. On the bedside table sat a cup of warm milk. Beside it was a drawing held down beneath the glass. Emma had drawn it. 2 crooked little stick figures holding hands, with uneven handwriting beside them. Daddy, get better soon. Just as a trace of warmth finally rose inside my chest, bang. The hospital room door was suddenly shoved open. Makoto walked in wearing a perfectly tailored suit, glowing with health and confidence. The contrast between him and me, wrapped in bandages with only my eyes visible, could not have been more obvious. Makoto clicked his tongue mockingly. You really are hard to kill. Even after all that, you still survived. He circled slowly around my hospital bed, the ridicule in his voice dripping with poison. The doctor said your lower body is probably ruined. You'll never stand up again for the rest of your life. Tell me, when Willow sees you looking like this, won't she treasure me even more? I kept my eyes closed and said nothing. Makoto leaned close to my ear and whispered smugly. You probably still don't know, do you? During the days you were unconscious, Willow stayed by my side every single moment, and your 3 precious sons took turns telling me stories and feeding me meals every day. They're far more attentive to me than they ever were to you, their so-called father. He chuckled softly before poking the arm wrapped in bandages. Oh, right, you won't be seeing that horse of yours, Soul, ever again. When Willow heard I'd never tasted horse meat before, she immediately ordered someone to slaughter him. The stew was delicious. Such a shame you didn't get to taste it. Buzz. My eyes snapped open violently. The dead silence lingering in them for days exploded into monstrous waves of fury. Driven by strength I did not know I still possessed, I suddenly raised my hand and shoved Makoto with all my might. Chapter 10. Ah. Caught completely off guard, Makoto stumbled backward several steps. His lower back slammed into the chair beside the bed, making him grimace in pain. You crippled bastard. How dare you hit me? Clutching his waist, he scrambled back up and lunged toward the hospital bed, lifting his foot to viciously kick my legs. I'm going to kill you today. Stop right there. The nurse rushed into the room just in time to see Makoto raising his foot. This is a hospital, she shouted sharply. Makoto's leg froze midair. The very next second, he grabbed his arm, his eyes instantly reddening as he pretended to look wronged. I was only trying to help Mr. Wang drink some water. He misunderstood and thought I was going to push him, so he attacked me. The nurse suspiciously glanced toward me, only to see my jaw clenched tightly while my chest rose violently beneath the bandages. In the end, she asked no further questions. After quietly reminding him that shouting was forbidden in the hospital, she turned and went to call the doctor. Makoto shot me a vicious glare, straightened his sleeves, and left resentfully. After examining me, the doctor let out a heavy sigh. Mr. Wang, the damage to your lumbar spine is more severe than we originally expected. In the future, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for you to stand again. I stared at the ceiling calmly. I understand. No one noticed that beneath the blanket, my hand was tightly gripping a note delivered by my bodyguard at dawn. It contained the information I had ordered him to find overnight, the whereabouts of Bradley, the legendary medical specialist who had long since retired. In my previous life, I had once read about him in an old magazine. According to the article, he was the world's top spinal surgeon. Over the next half-month, Willow only visited twice. The first time she entered the room, there seemed to be a trace of guilt hidden in her eyes. She carried a thermos container in her hand. I had the housekeeper make soup specifically for you. I turned my face away. She quietly placed the soup down, sat in silence for several minutes, then left. As she walked out the door, I heard her instruct the bodyguards, keep watch over Mr. Wang. Don't let Makoto come here again. The second time, she arrived with her assistant carrying a pile of expensive supplements. The moment she left, I coldly instructed the Wang family bodyguards, throw them away, along with the foolish love I had wasted on her all these years. Throw all of it into the trash. The day I was discharged from the hospital happened to be the same day we had agreed to finalize the divorce. I called Willow. 10 o'clock. Civil Affairs Bureau. We're getting the divorce certificate. There was silence on the other end for 3 seconds. Then came a mocking laugh. Hey, don't worry. Since you insist on acting out this little drama, I'll gladly play along to the end. Before I could reply, the call was disconnected. See? Even now, that woman still believed my decision to divorce her was nothing more than another emotional tantrum. The moment the call ended, voices sounded outside the hospital room. Do you think Dad is really going to get the divorce certificate today? Mom told us to come see if he's serious and asked us to go with him. Do you think he'll really take Emma away? Elias's little face was filled with worry while he casually played with the newest handheld game console Makoto had bought him. It definitely won't be Emma. She's a girl. She's always sick, and she's not even as smart as us. Ivan spoke in his usual overly mature tone. Then he'll definitely choose one of us. Santino immediately added. Uncle Ito said if we go with Dad, we won't get to visit Disneyland anymore. His face was filled with misery. The three boys walked into the room looking utterly hopeless. Dad, we came to pick you up from the hospital. Mom said she'll wait for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau and told us to come with you. When I remained silent, Ivan immediately grew anxious. Dad. Mom guessed correctly, didn't she? You don't actually want a divorce at all, right? Elias hurriedly followed up. Yeah, Dad. I honestly think Mom doesn't love you at all. You should just leave her already. No matter which one of us three you choose, we'll always stand on your side. Looking at the anxiety on their faces, I only found it laughable. What made them so certain that I would choose one of these three children who had already been completely brainwashed by Makoto? My voice was unusually firm. Don't worry, this divorce is definitely happening, and I will never regret it. What I did not say aloud was, out of the three of them, I would choose none. The boys exchanged glances, visibly relieved. I ordered someone to send them ahead to the Civil Affairs Bureau while I remained behind in the hospital room waiting for the Wong family's people. Not long afterward, the hospital room door opened. Dozens of black-clad bodyguards filed inside in orderly formation before bowing simultaneously. Young master, the old madam sent us to escort you. Supported by the bodyguards, I slowly and steadily rose to my feet from the wheelchair. Let's go. Chapter 11. On the way to the Civil Affairs Bureau, I received a message from my mother. George, don't worry, I've already picked up Emma. We're waiting for you at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Then we'll head straight to the airport. I slowly closed my eyes. When I opened them again, the lifeless silence within them had completely vanished, replaced only by a terrifying sharpness. Inside the Civil Affairs Bureau, Willow stood in a white dress, intimately holding onto Makoto, who was dressed in a custom-made suit. Handsome man, beautiful woman. Anyone unaware of the truth would think they were newlyweds registering their marriage. Makoto gazed at her lovingly. Willow, is it really okay for us to get married today? Willow stood on tiptoe and kissed the corner of his lips gently, her tone tender. If my father hadn't forced me with his death back then, how could I possibly have married George? You waited for me all these years. I wish I could marry you immediately. Makoto hugged her proudly, but the corner of his eye remained fixed firmly on the entrance. I smiled faintly. Looks like I arrived at the perfect time. The instant my voice sounded, the entire hall fell silent. I wore a silver-gray suit, my hair slicked neatly back, a faint smile hanging at the corners of my lips. Makoto's face changed dramatically. How is he standing? He blurted out. Willow's gaze landed on me, and for a brief moment, she seemed completely stunned. Willow, it's time to finalize the divorce with him. Makoto hurriedly tugged at her sleeve anxiously. The official seal slammed down heavily, and just like that, our 8-year marriage officially came to an end. Makoto visibly relaxed with relief and immediately pushed the three boys toward me. Now you can finally tell the truth. Which child are you taking with you? At that moment, my mother stormed into the hall while holding Emma's hand. Little Emma wore a pink princess dress. The moment she saw me, she ran over excitedly. Daddy, I crouched down and hugged my daughter tightly. Then I stood upright, holding Emma's little hand firmly in mine, the corner of my lips lifting slightly. From the very beginning, she was the only one I ever wanted. The instant those words fell, the entire hall became so silent that only the ticking of the clock could be heard. The tenderness on Willow's face instantly froze solid. Her gaze locked tightly onto the hand holding Emma's. Although the three boys secretly felt relieved at not being chosen, they could not understand why their father would abandon them in favor of Emma, the daughter who had been raised away at her grandmother's house. An inexplicable anger suddenly surged through Willow's chest, making her strangely restless. She had been completely certain I would choose one of the boys. She truly believed this divorce was just another one of my attention-seeking tricks, and that eventually I would come crawling back. The growing anxiety and irritation inside her finally drove her to act. No, you need to choose another child. Before anyone could react, she stepped forward and reached for Emma. Daddy. Emma's little face turned pale with panic as she looked at me helplessly for protection. I immediately stepped forward and blocked Willow. What exactly do you mean by this? Willow. Willow's gloomy gaze swept repeatedly between Emma and me. her tone cold and hard. What do I mean? You already knew I agreed to the marriage alliance with the Ito family, yet you deliberately chose Emma. You're obviously trying to use her as leverage to destroy my relationship with the Ito family. Willow, ignoring her anger, I calmly met her eyes. We've known each other since childhood, and we were married for 8 years. You should understand what kind of person I am. Word by word, I repeated clearly. I said I'm choosing Emma, and no one will change my mind. My voice was not loud, yet every single person in the hall heard it clearly. The 3 boys exploded first, crowding around me frantically. You can't choose Emma. Didn't you always dislike her? Why won't you choose one of us instead? They grabbed tightly onto my sleeves, their voices trembling with tears. Dad, don't you love us anymore? I forcefully shook their hands away. That's right, I don't love you anymore. Those words were not only meant for them, they were also meant for Willow. Impossible. Chapter 12. Willow's heart shook violently. George had once loved her more than life itself. How could he suddenly stop loving her just like that? These must just be words spoken out of anger. She desperately tried to comfort herself that way, yet the hand clutching the divorce certificate trembled uncontrollably. She could not understand why the divorce she had longed for so badly now left her chest aching as she watched George preparing to leave. She even felt an uncontrollable urge to stop him. Willow opened her mouth. They're still what? My gaze instantly sharpened like a blade, piercing directly toward the mother and her 3 sons. You want to say they're my biological sons? That I can't bear to part with them? The smile disappeared from my face. I casually waved the divorce certificate once before slipping it into my pocket. I can. Willow, we're finished. The 3 boys belong to you now. I wish your family of 5 lifelong happiness and everlasting love. Makoto sharply sensed the change in Willow's attitude and immediately stepped forward to wrap an arm around her possessively. Then thank you very much for your blessing, Mr. Wong. Willow, it's getting late. We still need to register our marriage. Yet Willow's eyes remained fixed stubbornly on my calm expression. Seeing no reaction from me at all, she let out a cold laugh. Fine, then let's go get married right now. George, don't regret this later when you come begging for my forgiveness. She was convinced I was only pretending to be calm. What she did not know was that after reliving my life once already, the heart she and those 3 boys had crushed beneath their feet could never return to what it once was. I smiled freely. Don't worry, you'll never see that day. I took Emma's hand and walked over to my mother. Mom, let's go home. My mother shot Willow several vicious glares, but when she looked back at Emma and me, her eyes instantly softened with warmth. Yes, let's go home. Emma held her father's hand with one hand and her grandmother's with the other. The smile on her little face was bright and overflowing with happiness. This was the first time in her life that someone had firmly chosen her. Daddy had not abandoned her. She was truly so happy. She tightened her tiny grip around my hand. Daddy, thank you for choosing me. Emma definitely won't disappoint you. Her serious little expression softened my heart instantly, filling me with even greater tenderness. Emma is already a wonderful child. Daddy should be thanking you too, for always choosing me. The young Emma could not understand the countless emotions hidden within those words, but she responded with the brightest smile imaginable. My mother and I exchanged smiles. Hand in hand, the 3 generations of our family walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau together, leaving the people behind us completely abandoned in place. Just like that. Without even the slightest trace of attachment. Elias frowned deeply. He really is a terrible father. Good thing we're finally getting a new dad soon. He was the first to run excitedly toward Makoto, looking up at him with sparkling eyes full of expectation. From today onward, our whole family can finally be together. Ivan and Santino quickly ran over as well, sweetly changing the way they addressed him. Dad. Makoto's face immediately filled with a warm, fatherly smile as he rubbed their heads affectionately, but from the corner of his eye, he noticed the dark expression clouding Willow's face. By now, the surrounding crowd had already pieced together the truth from scattered conversations and whispers. That's Willow, right? She just got divorced and immediately came to register marriage with another man. Seriously, those 3 kids are way too cold-hearted. Their biological father just left, and they don't even look sad at all. That man in the suit definitely doesn't look like a good person. Look at how smug he's smiling. The 3 boys' faces instantly turned bright red. Just as they were about to argue back, Willow coldly snapped. Enough. Hurry up and leave. Haven't you embarrassed yourselves enough already? She turned and walked away first, her back radiating an indescribable sense of humiliation. Makoto froze briefly before hurriedly leading the 3 boys after her. Meanwhile, the 3 generations of the Wong family were already seated aboard a flight bound for England. Leaning against the airplane window, I watched the city beneath us gradually shrink until it disappeared completely beneath the clouds. Sunlight poured across my face, softening the sharp lines of my features. A relieved smile slowly spread across my lips. The people I loved were beside me. The people who did not love me had all been abandoned behind. The airplane wings sliced through the clouds as we flew toward the other side of the ocean. In this life, I was finally carrying my own light as I walked toward a brand new beginning. Chapter 13. In the end, Willow never went with Makoto to register their marriage. Instead, she turned around and left. It felt as though an invisible hand were gripping her heart tightly. Sharp pain mixed with an inexplicable panic, almost crushing her completely. She should have been happy. The divorce was finalized. No one would stand in the way of her relationship with Makoto ever again. Yet it felt as though a massive hole had opened inside her chest, cold wind endlessly pouring into it, leaving her hollow and uneasy. She drove wildly through the streets before finally returning to the house she had lived in for 8 years. Not long afterward, Makoto returned with the 3 boys. Willow, why did you leave? We still haven't gotten our marriage certificate yet. He walked toward her calmly, though nervousness was clearly hidden deep in his eyes. Willow looked at the men she had once loved so desperately, but now, there was not the slightest ripple in her heart. The excitement from their first meeting, the countless sleepless nights spent thinking about him, all of it had become blurred and distant. She forced the corners of her lips upward, trying to smile, only to realize her face had become unbearably stiff. The atmosphere today wasn't suitable for registering marriage. Willow casually found an excuse, her voice dry. Another day. Once things calm down, I'll take you then. A flash of anger crossed Makoto's eyes instantly, but his face quickly returned to its usual gentle smile. Okay, I'll listen to you. Yet beneath the table, his fingernails dug deeply into his palms. That night, Makoto gently wrapped his arms around Willow from behind. His voice carried a seductive softness, brushing against her ear like feathers. Willow, tonight, you're finally mine. But Willow instinctively shrank away. Seeing her reaction, Makoto clenched his teeth and reached toward her clothes. Right then, loud arguing suddenly erupted from the children's room next door. I want a bedtime story. I want Daddy to tell it. Where's my bear pajamas? I don't want the gray ones. I want fresh orange juice, not milk. Milk tastes disgusting. In less than half a day without George, the entire household had already fallen into complete chaos. Willow abruptly shoved Makoto away, irritation creeping into her voice. I'm going to check on them. Makoto froze where he stood, staring at her hurriedly departing figure as the tenderness on his face cracked apart little by little. After a long silence, his expression twisted viciously. George, you're already gone, yet you still haunt this place like a ghost. From that day onward, Willow seemed to completely forget about getting married. Every day, she sat on the living room sofa, her gaze unconsciously drifting toward the front door, as though waiting for someone. Deep down, she held an inexplicable certainty. George would come back. After all, during every previous argument and cold war between them, he had always been the one to return first, cautiously trying to cheer her up. He loved her that much. How could he possibly bear to leave for real? But half a month had already passed. Not only had George failed to return, there was not even a single trace of news about him. Unable to resist anymore, she opened social media, wanting to check his updates. Instead, she was met with a glaring red exclamation mark. She had been blocked. Panic surged violently through her chest. Her trembling fingers quickly dialed George's number, but the only response was a cold mechanical voice. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. No longer in service. He had actually cancelled his number. Willow finally lost all composure. Snatching up her phone, she immediately called her secretary. Investigate immediately. I want to know where my husband went after leaving, whether he has new contact information, and every detail connected to him. I want the information now. Her secretary's cautious voice came through the receiver. Willow, hasn't your husband been by your side this whole time? I'm talking about George. Willow snapped furiously, her tone filled with impatience. Makoto isn't my husband. We never even got married. Not far away, at the kitchen doorway, Makoto's hand holding a bowl of chicken soup suddenly trembled violently. His face turned deathly pale, filled with disbelief. Willow was no longer planning to marry him. Then what about all his years of scheming? All the humiliation he had endured? Had it all been for nothing? No, he absolutely would not allow that to happen. Chapter 14. A dark glint flashed through Makoto's eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an exquisite white porcelain bottle. Unscrewing the cap carefully, he poured the white powder inside into the chicken soup little by little, gently stirring it with a spoon until every trace completely dissolved. After finishing, he adjusted his hair in the mirror, once again putting on his warm smile before carrying the soup slowly toward the living room. Willow, you haven't had much appetite these past few days, so I specially made chicken soup to help you recover. He placed the tray onto the coffee table, scooped up a spoonful, and brought it toward her lips. Come on, try it. I simmered it for 3 whole hours. Normally, Willow liked seeing him act this intimately, but now, staring at the spoon in front of her. All she felt was irritation. "I don't want soup." She frowned and turned her head away. "You drink it yourself." The smile on Makoto's face stiffened instantly. A moment later, his eyes reddened, and his voice turned hoarse with grievance. "I know my cooking isn't very good, but I really spent a long time making this soup. Just treat it as giving me some face and drink one sip. Okay." Looking at his wounded expression, Willow ultimately did not refuse again. She took the spoon and set it aside before preparing to lift the bowl and drink it all in one go. Creak! The sound of the front gate opening suddenly came from the courtyard. Willow shot to her feet excitedly. The bowl of chicken soup slipped from her hands and shattered across the floor, but she paid no attention to it at all, rushing straight toward the entrance. "George? Is that you? Did you come back?" Hearing the urgency in Willow's voice when she called George's name, Makoto's eyes instantly darkened as his fingers silently tightened. "Mom." The voices that answered from the doorway belonged to the three boys. The anticipation on Willow's face instantly vanished, replaced by unmistakable disappointment. "Aren't you boys supposed to be at your piano competition today? Why are you back so early?" The moment the competition was mentioned, Elias's little face flushed bright red with anger. "Mom, they went too far. They actually said we acknowledged a thief as our father." Ivan quickly added, equally furious. "We tried explaining that Uncle Ito is our real father, but instead of apologizing, they mocked us and called us illegitimate children. We got so angry that we started fighting with them. And then we got disqualified from the competition." Santino sniffled pitifully and pointed at the swollen bruise near his eye. "Mom, look at my eye. Are we really illegitimate children?" Willow's expression became complicated. She was furious that the boys had carelessly spread the family's ugly secrets everywhere. Yet at the same time, her heart ached seeing them bullied outside. For the very first time, she felt regret. If she had never divorced George, if she had never let the children know the truth, would all of today's humiliation have been avoided? But Makoto failed to notice her changing emotions. After hearing what happened to the boys, not only did his eyes show no pain, but a trace of hidden delight even flashed across them. Immediately afterward, he put on an earnest expression and said, "Willow, we should hurry and get our marriage certificate. Once I officially have the proper status, I'll definitely protect them well. No outsiders will ever dare bully them again." His words sounded sincere and heartfelt, as though he were truly a devoted father thinking only of the children. But to Willow's ears, every word sounded unbearably harsh. They've already been bullied this badly, and all you can think about is getting married. Her furious gaze shot directly toward Makoto. "If you don't marry me, does that suddenly mean they're no longer your children? Does that mean you won't stand up for them anymore? Don't forget who caused them to suffer like this today." If George were here, she stopped abruptly, nearly blurting out the rest of her thoughts. If George were here, he would have already rushed out to confront the people who bullied the children. He would never behave like this, thinking only about himself. In the end, she swallowed those words back down, but when she looked at Makoto again, her eyes had already grown colder and colder. "Makoto, since when did you become this obsessed with benefits and status? You've truly disappointed me." Makoto was left speechless. Chapter 15. The three sons looked at each other, then back at her, their eyes carrying a trace of distance that had never been there before. Only after George left did they slowly realize that the father they had always complained about had long since become an irreplaceable part of their lives. At night, no one told them bedtime stories anymore. The meals on the dining table were still exquisite, yet they never tasted as comforting as before. The servants folded the clothes in their wardrobes neatly, but the outfits never matched their preferences. No one would prepare tomorrow's socks for them the night before ever again. When they went to school, there was no longer anyone reminding them to watch for cars while crossing the street at the school gate. And when they returned home, there was no smiling figure waiting in the foyer to take their backpacks. These subtle changes left an emptiness in their hearts. After Makoto moved into the Liu family home, all his attention was focused on pleasing Willow. He never asked them, "Did you have a good day at school?" Nor did he patiently teach them lessons after scolding them gently for making mistakes. Only then did they belatedly understand that the feeling they missed so much was called a father's love. The three exchanged glances before asking softly, with uncertainty in their voices, "Mom, will Dad come back?" In an instant, the courtyard fell so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. Willow fell silent, but from an angle she could not see. Makoto glared viciously at the three children. Ungrateful little ingrates. He knew perfectly well that his relationship with Willow was already hanging by a thread, yet they were still hoping for George to come back. That twisted expression frightened the three children so much that they instinctively shrank behind Willow, fear shimmering in their watery eyes. After a long while, Willow let out a deep sigh and gently stroked the children's heads. "Don't worry, Dad will come back. She would definitely bring him back." Ring, ring. The sudden ringtone shattered the silence in the courtyard. Willow answered the call, and her expression gradually turned grim. Shock filled her voice as she said, "What? George took Emma overseas. All information about them has been erased. The trail went cold. Useless idiots," she shouted. "Increase the manpower investigating this. Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground. Find that father and daughter." Of course, she knew who was pulling strings behind the scenes. The Wang family had deep roots overseas, so they must have protected them tightly. Within the country, the Liu family's power was unmatched. But abroad, searching for them was like looking for a needle in the ocean. Only now did she realize that George Wang had truly left completely, without leaving himself even the slightest chance of turning back. Keep searching, no matter the cost. The person on the other end acknowledged the order, then hesitated before speaking again. "Willow, there's one more thing. During our investigation, we discovered that your car accident back then wasn't an accident. The driver who caused it had been in contact with Makoto before the incident, and afterward received a transfer of 500,000. Willow's pupils contracted sharply as she instinctively looked toward the men behind her. "And also," the caller paused, his tone becoming even more cautious, "the blood donation records were tampered with. The real donor wasn't Makoto. It was your ex-husband, George." Chapter 16. Boom. Willow felt as though thunder had exploded inside her mind, and the hand gripping her phone tightened violently. If this were true, then every accusation, every moment of coldness, every misunderstanding she had directed at George over the years had become a cruel joke. He had never abandoned her after the car accident. The men who dragged her out of the wreckage and donated blood for her outside the operating room until he collapsed had always been him. The call disconnected. Willow slowly raised her eyes, dark waves surging within them as though a monstrous storm was about to erupt. Step by step, she walked toward Makoto. Finally, she stopped in front of him, grabbed his chin, and stared straight through every layer of his disguise. "I'm asking you one last time. Back at the accident scene, who was the one who saved me?" Makoto's heart jolted. Panic flashed through his eyes, but he forced himself to sound calm. "Willow, what are you talking about? I was the one who saved you. Haven't you always known that?" Willow's heart sank heavily. From his shifting gaze, she saw the truth that had been buried for years. The rage inside her erupted like a volcano. "You bastard, you're still trying to lie to me even now." She kicked him hard in the knee, forcing him to kneel and raise his head to meet the bloodshot fury in her eyes. Looking down at his panicked face, she spoke with hatred dripping from every word. "You staged an entire life-saving act and made me misunderstand George like a fool for 8 whole years. Makoto, what a brilliant scheme." Sealed memories suddenly flooded back into her mind. Back then, she really had fallen for Makoto, but the moment he accepted the $5 million check her mother handed him and boarded a plane overseas without even looking back, those feelings completely disappeared. Later, during her honeymoon trip with George, they got into a car accident. Her injuries had been severe. In her dazed state, she only knew that a man had saved her, but when she woke up, the first person she saw was Makoto. A trace of suspicion had crossed her mind, yet the first thing she blurted out was concern for George. "Where's George? Is he okay?" Makoto had smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, Mr. Wang's injuries aren't serious. He's resting in the room next door." Over the following days, Makoto took meticulous care of her. It wasn't that she had never doubted his sudden appearance. She secretly investigated him, only to find Makoto's name in the hospital's blood donation records. The word benefactor became like shackles, filling her with indescribable guilt toward the men who had once betrayed her. After being discharged from the hospital, she arranged for him to stay in a villa in the suburbs and gradually lowered her guard around him. He told her he wanted a child connected to her by blood, yet he also could not bear to give up the hard-earned opportunity to study abroad. And so, as though possessed, she secretly swapped the IVF samples, endured 10 months of pregnancy, and quietly waited for him back home. For 7 years, she elevated him to an executive position in the company and made him a rising star in the design industry, believing that doing so would repay that non-existent debt of gratitude. But now she finally understood. Everything had been a carefully orchestrated scam. At that thought, the way Willow looked at him was as though she wanted to tear him apart alive. "If it weren't for you, George would never have left." She remembered George's reddened eyes on the day he agreed to the divorce, and pain pierced through her chest. She was the one who had wronged him. Willow's eyes burned scarlet, murderous intent radiating from her entire body. "Makoto, you deserve to die." The next second, the hand gripping Makoto's throat tightened abruptly. Makoto's face instantly turned dark purple. His tongue lolled out uncontrollably, his eyes rolled back, and his limbs flailed helplessly as he hovered on the brink of suffocation. Hiss! A sudden sharp pain shot through Willow's arm. Instinctively, she loosened her grip, and Makoto collapsed onto the floor, clutching his throat and coughing violently. It was Elias. He had sunk his teeth into her arm and refused to let go. The 3 children had no idea why their mother suddenly tried to kill Makoto, but to them, he was their father, The men who had always told them since childhood that Dad loves you the most. They spread their arms and shielded Makoto Ito behind them, their eyes red with tears as they begged. Mom, please let Uncle Ito go. If this keeps going, he'll die. We already lost one dad. We don't want to lose another one. Amid the children's tearful cries, Willow slowly regained her senses. Looking at the mixture of fear and pleading on their faces, her expression became unbearably complicated. A person like him, Willow said slowly, doesn't deserve to be your father. Remember this. The only father you have is George. Chapter 17. Having narrowly escaped death, Makoto gasped for air desperately. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Willow. Yet beneath that fear lurked unwillingness and resentment. He had been so close to succeeding. As long as they got the marriage certificate, as long as George never came back, why did everything have to fall apart at the very last moment? His gaze suddenly landed on the 3 children, and something shifted in his eyes. Fortunately, he still had one final bargaining chip. Willow pointed at Makoto on the floor and barked at the bodyguards. Throw him out. If anyone dares let him back into this house again, pack your bags and get lost. Yes, ma'am. The bodyguards immediately stepped forward and grabbed Makoto by the arms. No, I'm not leaving. Makoto violently broke free and crawled toward Willow on his hands and knees. Clutching her leg, he burst into tears. Willow, I didn't mean to deceive you. I was only confused because I loved you too much. I'm not asking for anything else. I only want to stay and take care of the children until Mr. Wang comes back. I owe them too much. Please, give me a chance to atone for my sins. Watching him cry so miserably, the 3 boys suddenly remembered all the gifts he used to buy for them and could not help softening a little. They looked at Willow in unison. Mom. Willow clenched her fists tightly and slowly closed her eyes. After a long silence, she finally opened them again, her voice devoid of even the slightest warmth. This is the only time. Makoto, keep your filthy schemes to yourself. If I catch you pulling tricks again, I'll make you wish you were dead. With that, she took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the rage surging inside her, then turned and walked away. Makoto watched her retreating figure, and a triumphant smile curled onto his lips. Turning toward the 3 boys, he beckoned to them and lowered his voice. Elias, Ivan, Santino, can you help Dad with something? The moment the 3 boys met his calculating gaze, their bodies stiffened violently, alarm bells ringing in their hearts. Elias frowned and took a step back, his expression guarded. Uncle Ito, Mom already said that George is our real dad. Ivan tugged lightly at Santino's sleeve before quickly adding, we're still little, we can't help with anything. We still have classes later, so we're leaving first. Santino grabbed his 2 brothers and hurried upstairs. Their small figures quickly disappeared at the end of the staircase. They might be young, but they were not stupid. There was no way they could fail to see such obvious manipulation. Makoto froze where he stood, watching the children's retreating backs. His crimson eyes instantly filled with madness. He muttered to himself in a low voice. Why do you all have to force me like this? I never wanted things to come to this point. Chapter 18. At the entrance of Eton School in England, the morning fog had yet to fully disperse, and golden sunlight filtered through the gaps between the plane tree leaves onto the stone-paved road. Dressed in a sharply tailored ivory suit, I stepped out of the Rolls-Royce. A smile lingered on my lips as I bent down and lifted the little girl from the car. Emma wore a dark blue school uniform dress, the bright red bow at her collar tied perfectly. Emma, Daddy can only walk you this far, I said while gently smoothing the loose strands of hair on her forehead. Be good and head inside. Emma tilted up her little face and planted a loud kiss on my cheek. Don't worry, Daddy, Emma will get along well with her new classmates. After saying that, she carried her tiny backpack and skipped toward the school gate. After a few steps, she turned back to wave at me before her small figure quickly disappeared into the sea of students wearing the same uniform. Touching the cheek my daughter had secretly kissed, the smile in my eyes deepened. Ever since arriving in England, perhaps because she had been in a better mood, Emma's health had improved significantly. Even her personality had become much livelier, gradually gaining the brightness and cheerfulness a child her age should have. After returning to the car, my special assistant handed me a stack of documents. President Wang, the Liu family issued a global bounty notice last night, offering £50 million for information on your whereabouts. My fingers paused while flipping through the papers, and my gaze instantly turned cold. What else? I asked. Willow has already discovered that Makoto was the mastermind behind the car accident back then, but she has not taken any action against him. The assistant's tone remained calm and emotionless. Makoto is still staying with the Liu family under the excuse of taking care of the children. The hand holding my pen paused for a moment, but my expression remained calm and unreadable. In the future, there's no need to report anything related to the Liu family to me anymore, I said. After signing my name, I pushed the documents back. Whatever they do has nothing to do with me. Just as the words left my mouth, A news notification suddenly popped up on my phone screen. The headline glaringly eye-catching. Lu Corporation CEO live streams search for ex-husband. Publicly apologizes and begs for forgiveness. I raised an eyebrow and tapped the notification open. Instantly, Willow's beautiful yet exhausted face filled the screen. She wore a tight red dress, her hair slightly messy as she spoke to the camera with longing in her eyes. George, I'm sorry. Please accept my belated apology. Divorce was never my intention. The one I've always loved is you. If Makoto hadn't lied to me, I would never have done those terrible things to you. As long as you're willing to come back, I'll do anything. At the end of the video, the three boys crowded in front of the camera as well, shouting together, "Dad, we miss you so much. Please come home soon." Watching this emotional performance from the mother and her three sons, not only was I unmoved, but my stomach churned with disgust instead. I let out a cold laugh and tossed the phone onto the empty seat beside me. Assistant, contact the legal department. Suppress this public narrative immediately, and notify the PR team that I'll hold a press conference at 3 this afternoon to publicly announce my identity. Since the Lu family insisted on dragging me back into this farce, then I might as well step fully into the spotlight. Looking into the distance, I said word by word, and replied to the Su family, I agree to the marriage alliance. Not long after I officially took over the Wang Corporation, the Su family had already sent representatives to England. The Su family had once stood alongside the Wang family, the Lu family, and the Lin family as one of H City's 4 great families. Their foundations ran deep, and their power could not be underestimated. Most importantly, Anna Su liked me, and I did not dislike her. I closed my eyes briefly, falling into distant memories. In my previous life, not long after news of my death was announced, Anna had poured the full strength of the Su family into fighting the Lu family to mutual destruction. Unfortunately, by then the Lu family had already swallowed up the Wang family, making their foundations unshakable. The Su family was no match for them at all. After failing to avenge me, Anna drank a cup of poison in front of my grave and ended her own life. Now that fate had given me another chance, I no longer wanted to fail her deep devotion. Very soon, my phone rang. The name Anna flashed across the screen. The moment I answered, her slightly nervous voice came through the receiver. Are you really willing to marry me? I immediately caught the trembling hidden in her words, and the corners of my lips curved upward slightly. What? Don't tell me you're unwilling. Anna Su's breathing quickened slightly. After a long pause, she suddenly let out a bright, clear laugh. Of course I'm willing. I'll have the PR department announce the good news between our two families right away. She paused, unable to hide the excitement in her voice as she asked, Are you ready? Chapter 19. A sharp glint flashed through my eyes. Of course, the alliance between the Wang family and the Su family had always been inevitable. I would never allow the tragedy of my previous life to repeat itself in this one. That very afternoon, the elite circles of H City were thrown into complete chaos. Anna Su, the head of the Su family, held a high-profile press conference and publicly announced the marriage alliance between the Su and Wang families. The reporters instantly exploded into an uproar, rushing forward one after another. Miss Su, are you truly planning to marry into the Wang family? George Wang is Willow's ex-husband, and Willow clearly still has feelings for him. Does that not bother you? There are rumors that you've secretly been in love with Mr. George for years. Is that true? It's true. Anna interrupted the reporter's relentless questioning. Her voice was not loud, yet every word carried unquestionable strength. George is my fiancé. I love him, so naturally I do not care about his past. From now on, I will be the one protecting his world. The entire venue erupted. This was no mere answer to a question, it was a public declaration of love. Immediately afterward, the Wang family in England released an official announcement as well. A series of documents followed one after another, fully confirming the authenticity of the alliance between the two families and leaving absolutely no room for doubt. Inside the CEO office of the Lu Group, bang! Willow Lu swept every document off her desk in one furious motion, her eyes bloodshot as she roared. Impossible. How could George agree to this marriage alliance? This has to be a publicity stunt. But the next second, she received an image of an invitation card. The golden double happiness symbol stabbed painfully into her eyes. It was the wedding invitation from the Su and Wang families, with the ceremony scheduled for the 8th day of next month. Her phone slipped from her hand onto the floor. Willow collapsed weakly into her office chair, her expression dark and unreadable. The secretary rushed in frantically. This is bad, miss. The Wang and Su families have joined forces and launched a fierce attack on our stock market. Several shareholders have already openly stated that they're withdrawing their investments. Willow stared at the rapidly plummeting stock charts on the computer screen. The fury in her eyes nearly burst into flames. If this continued, the Lu family would completely collapse before long. She forced herself to calm down. After regaining her composure, she immediately ordered, Call a shareholders meeting right now. I'll personally explain things to the shareholders. And contact the Lin family immediately. Tell them I have something extremely important to discuss. Clenching her fists tightly, she walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, H-City glittered with dazzling lights, yet her eyes were filled with nothing but resentment. Just last month, George had still been by her side, caring for her attentively and catering to her every need. And now, only 1 month after the divorce, he had already rushed into a marriage alliance with Anna. He had changed sides faster than flipping the pages of a book. Could it be that he truly no longer loved her? The thought had barely surfaced before she forcibly suppressed it. Picking up her phone, she dialed a number. Investigate every movement and travel record of George and Anna for me. The more detailed, the better. Also, prepare plane tickets. I'm taking the 3 young masters to England. After hanging up, she subconsciously raised her left hand, her fingers repeatedly brushing against the wedding ring on her ring finger. Reason told her that the most important thing right now was stabilizing the Lin family and joining forces with them to resist the combined pressure from the Wang and Su families. But deep inside, a voice continued screaming at her, making her cling to a sliver of hope. Perhaps George would give her another chance for the sake of the 3 children. Perhaps he would reconcile with her. After the shareholders' meeting ended hastily, Willow drove back to the Liu family villa. The moment she entered, she received terrible news. What? Elias, Ivan, and Santino are sick. Makoto stood nearby, his voice hoarse as he said. After seeing the news about George marrying Anna, they suddenly developed high fevers that won't go down. They must have been frightened by the news. Willow could not be bothered listening to him adding fuel to the fire. Frowning deeply, she hurried upstairs to check on the 3 boys. Pushing open the bedroom door, she saw the 3 little boys lying in bed, their small faces flushed an unnatural red from the fever. Her anger exploded instantly. Turning around, she glared at Makoto, who had followed her upstairs. They're already this sick. Why didn't you take them to the hospital immediately? Makoto's eyes flickered nervously as he hurriedly explained. They refused to go no matter what. They insisted on waiting for you to come back before listening. Nonsense. Willow snapped coldly. We're going to the hospital right now. She directed the servants while carrying the children downstairs and quickly got into the car. Makoto originally wanted to follow them, but the moment he reached the car, Willow clicked the door locks shut, not giving him the slightest chance to get in. The engine roared to life as the black Mercedes Maybach sped away, exhaust fumes spraying directly onto Makoto. Cough, cough. He covered his mouth and coughed a few times, looking toward the direction where the luxury car disappeared. The concern in his eyes instantly vanished, replaced only by venomous hatred. Grinding his teeth, he hissed. Willow can only belong to me. No one else is allowed to take her away. George, not even you. Chapter 20. The sudden illness of the 3 children forced Willow to temporarily put aside her plans to fly to England. Fortunately, because they were treated in time, the little boys soon woke up from their hospital beds. Fear still lingered in their eyes. The moment they saw Willow, tears immediately rolled down their cheeks as they cried out in unison. Mom, please don't abandon us. Willow's heart trembled. She was somewhat surprised by how intense the children's reaction was. After thinking about it for a moment, she assumed they had been deeply shaken by the news of George's remarriage. So she patiently comforted them. Don't worry, Mom will always stay by your side. She gently stroked their heads. You're Mom's precious children. How could I ever abandon you? The moment those words were spoken, the 3 boys exchanged quick glances, a trace of guilt flashing silently through their eyes. When they looked back at Willow, their little faces were full of hesitation, as though they wanted to say something but could not bring themselves to speak. Before they could sort out their thoughts, Makoto suddenly pushed open the door and walked in. Willow, you've stayed up all night taking care of them. You must be exhausted. Go back and get some rest. I'll stay here. A gentle smile hung on his face, his tone full of concern. Willow truly was exhausted. Rubbing her aching forehead, she nodded without thinking much about it. She failed to notice that the moment Makoto entered the room, the children instantly fell silent. The hospital room, which had moments ago been filled with tearful sobs, became eerily quiet. After leaving the room, she did not return to the villa. Instead, she curled up on a bench in the hospital corridor and drifted into sleep. In her dream, she returned to the day she proposed the divorce. But unlike reality, the George in the dream refused to sign the papers no matter what. And yet the version of herself in the dream treated him coldly for Makoto's sake, even planning to take the 3 boys overseas and happily marry Makoto. Don't do this, Willow. You can't betray him. Inside the dream, she screamed desperately and tried to rush forward to stop herself, but her body seemed blocked by an invisible wall. No one could hear her voice. The scene quickly shifted to a wedding venue. George suddenly rushed forward, only to be violently struck by a speeding truck and sent flying through the air. He lay on the ground, barely breathing, and the dream version of herself stood there with the 3 children. staring at him with the indifference one would show a complete stranger. Tears streamed down Willow's face as she screamed. "Save him, Willow. He's the one you're supposed to love. You'll regret this." She roared helplessly and tried to run over and hold him, but her hands passed through his body again and again, unable to touch even the slightest warmth. All she could do was watch helplessly as roaring flames swallowed his figure. She watched his ashes being placed into a tiny urn, buried alone in the most remote corner of a cemetery. On the gravestone, his photograph wore a gentle smile that instantly turned her eyes red with grief. All she could do was repeat the same broken words over and over. I'm sorry. Then the scene abruptly changed again. The dream version of herself had devoured the Wong family's businesses and effortlessly destroyed the Su family. She sat triumphantly at the top floor of the Lu Corporation. But in the next second, a sharp pain tore through her heart. She collapsed stiffly to the floor and was rushed to the hospital. The moment she was laid on the hospital bed, Willow felt her soul suddenly attach itself to that body. Yet her body seemed nailed in place, unable to move even slightly. At that moment, the hospital room door opened, and Makoto walked in looking radiant and full of life. When he saw her lying there covered in tubes, there was not a trace of sadness in his eyes. Instead, a mocking smile curled onto his lips. "Oh, Willow, you really are an idiot." He bent down close to her ear and whispered, "You were played from the very beginning, yet you still foolishly handed everything to me on a silver platter." As though he were telling the funniest joke in the world, his smile became even more smug. "You still don't know, do you? I was a pawn planted beside you by the president of the Lin family from the very start. That car accident back then was never an accident. And those 3 children," he glanced toward the doorway before lowering his voice further, "they have absolutely nothing to do with you either. There was no way I would let Maria carry my children. So on the day you and George did the IVF procedure, I had already switched the samples. They're all sons of me and Maria Lin, the Lin family. The very same Lin family that had always stood against the Lu family among H City's 4 great families. No wonder the Lin family had unexpectedly helped her when she attacked the Su family back then." The truth became countless sharp blades stabbing viciously into her heart. Chapter 21. On the hospital bed, her chest rose and fell violently as the heart monitor emitted a piercing alarm. Yet outside the room, everything remained terrifyingly silent. Not a single doctor or nurse came in. Makoto calmly adjusted his hair and said, "You're useless now. It's time for you to make room for me and the children." With that, he pulled out her oxygen tube without the slightest hesitation. Willow's eyes snapped open, monstrous hatred surging within her dark gaze. Makoto, however, met her eyes fearlessly. She could only watch helplessly as, beneath his cold stare, she struggled and swallowed her final breath. "Ha!" Willow jolted awake from the nightmare. The suffocating feeling of death still seemed wrapped tightly around her throat. She gasped desperately for air, her back already soaked with cold sweat. Only after a long while did her violently pounding heart gradually calm down. But when her gaze landed once more on the tightly shut hospital room door, her expression darkened inch by inch. Was that truly just a dream? Why had every detail been so terrifyingly clear, so real that it chilled her to the bone? She took a deep breath, and her eyes suddenly turned ruthless. Standing up, she pushed open the hospital room door. The 3 children were still asleep, moving quietly. She walked over and carefully plucked several strands of hair from each child's head, placing them into evidence bags one by one. After leaving the room, she handed the bags to the assistant waiting outside. "Take these to the most authoritative DNA testing center. I want the results as fast as possible." Not long after the assistant left, Willow received a call from her secretary. "Willow, the Lin family agreed to cooperate." The news felt like a bucket of ice water poured directly over her heart. She clenched her fists tightly, then slowly loosened them again. Now was not the time to tear everything apart. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "Tell the PR department to hold a press conference immediately. Announce the cooperation between the 2 families first and stabilize the stock market." After hanging up, her eyes became terrifyingly calm. Over the following days, Willow's attitude toward Makoto changed completely. The cold indifference from before vanished, replaced with open and unmistakable affection. Not only did she provide him with luxury cars and villas, but she even gave him a black card, allowing him to spend however he pleased. Makoto did not disappoint her expectations. Using his relationship with her, he constantly persuaded the Lin family to increase their investments in the Lu Corporation. But behind the scenes, Willow had already laid an inescapable trap. She had bugged Makoto's phone. Every interaction he had with the Lin family, every single conversation, appeared clearly before her eyes. Meanwhile, far away in England, I was staring at a document. "There's no issue with the authenticity of this contract?" I asked. I looked up toward Attorney Chan from the legal department. Attorney Chan set down the documents and nodded firmly. "Absolutely genuine. Willow has officially transferred 70% of the Lu Corporation shares under her name to Miss Emma. 3 days ago, Willow had privately contacted me and proposed making Emma the sole heir, on the condition that the Wong and Su families join forces to help her deal with the Lin family. There was no reason to refuse meat delivered directly to my mouth. Naturally, I did not trust her so easily. I immediately proposed a condition. She had to transfer 70% of her shares to Emma first as collateral. To my surprise, Willow agreed without even hesitating. Now that she had fulfilled her promise, I would not go back on mine either. Besides, these things should have belonged to Emma in the first place. I was merely reclaiming them for my daughter ahead of time. A faint smile curved onto my lips. Send a message to Willow. Tell her I agree. We can act at any time. I had to admit, Willow's strategy of cutting off the enemy's foundation at the source was ruthless enough. George, are you really agreeing to cooperate with the Lu Corporation? At some point, Anna had already appeared at the doorway. Her eyes were filled with complicated emotions, yet there was not the slightest intention of stopping me. I turned back and smiled at her. You're here. Anna's gaze lingered on my face for a long moment before she finally asked softly, will you forgive her because of Emma? Chapter 22. Sensing the unease hidden in her voice, I took the initiative to step closer and gently pressed my fingertip against the corner of her lips. There's no need to ask that question a second time, I said. As for Willow and me, I spoke each word slowly and clearly. There is absolutely no possibility between us anymore. You are the woman who'll become my wife in the future. Anna immediately grabbed my hand. Her watery eyes shone like they were filled with stars. I believe you, she said softly. Meanwhile, after receiving the message from the Wong family, a sharp glint flashed through Willow's eyes. Finally, she murmured quietly, it's time to close the net. Early the next morning, Makoto had just woken from sleep when he saw Willow standing beside the bed, staring at him expressionlessly. Out of habit, he curved his lips into a smile. Willow, when did you wake up? Why didn't you call me? Normally at this hour, she would always share an intimate moment with him, but today, her cold black eyes looked as though they had been dipped in ice, making his heart shiver with fear. Since you're awake, she said coldly, then explain everything between you and the Lin family. There was not a trace of warmth in Willow's voice. The smile on Makoto's face instantly froze, and panic flashed through his eyes. How did she know? Gritting his teeth, he forced himself to look confused and innocent. Willow, what Lin family? What are you talking about? Did George say something bad about me again? My feelings for you are as clear as the sun and moon. You absolutely can't believe his attempts to drive a wedge between us. Willow sneered inwardly. Even at a time like this, he still wanted to throw dirt onto George. The corners of her lips curled slightly. If you don't want to talk, that's fine too. I already called the police. You can slowly explain everything to them at the station. Makoto's heart trembled violently. You called the police? Why? He shouted in disbelief. I'm your fiancé. I'm the man you love most. Even if you want to punish me, at least give me a reason. Willow Lu let out a cold laugh and threw a stack of documents directly in front of him. A reason? Fine, I'll give you one. You colluded with the Lin family and stole confidential business information from the Lu Corporation, causing losses of tens of billions. That's the reason. Because you're a corporate spy planted beside me by the Lin family. Makoto clenched his jaw tightly, forcing himself to calm down, lowering his posture. Even his tone softened considerably. Willow, I was forced into it too, for the sake of the 3 children. Can't you forgive me this once? If it had been before, his pitiful and submissive act would have softened her heart immediately. But now, Willow had already seen through his true nature completely. How could she possibly fall for it again? Narrowing her eyes, she repeated coldly. The 3 children. She sneered. If you hadn't staged that car accident back then and forced your way between George and me, how could we possibly have ended up divorced? The only person I've ever loved is George. That has never changed. If you hadn't used those filthy tricks to manipulate me, George would never have left. Not far away, the sound of police sirens grew louder and louder. Makoto gripped the bedsheets beneath him tightly. The innocent look on his face disappeared completely, replaced by eyes filled with venomous hatred. You say I deceived you. Fine, I admit it. But if your feelings for George were truly as unwavering as you claim, then how could I ever have had the chance to take advantage of the situation? To put it bluntly, you were the one whose heart changed first. The reason George left you is simply because he was utterly disappointed in you. He let out a cold laugh. And now that you regret it, it's only because you can't bear to lose the Wong family's massive fortune. You're jealous that Anna got everything that was supposed to belong to you. You hypocritical woman. Willow's expression instantly darkened. She raised her hand and slapped him hard across the face. That's nonsense. Chapter 23. Makoto covered his burning left cheek. Blood seeped from the corner of his mouth, yet the look in his eyes only grew more frenzied. He knew that once the police arrived, everything would be over, so he completely gave up pretending. You know the truth better than anyone else, he snarled. Willow lowered her gaze. Her entire presence as cold as ice. Originally, for the sake of our past relationship, I was planning to take extra care of the 3 children, she said coldly. But now, there's no need for that anymore. You deceived me into this relationship. I'll take back every single thing I ever gave you. From this moment on, there will no longer be the slightest connection between us. Once she dealt with Makoto and those 3 children, she could go find George. This time, no matter what price she had to pay, she would beg for his forgiveness. After speaking, she turned around to pack her luggage. Makoto had never expected her to be this ruthless. The crimson in his eyes deepened into madness. The next second, he grabbed a fruit knife nearby and lunged toward Willow's back with all his strength. Willow, go to hell. Bang. The bedroom door was violently kicked open as several uniformed police officers rushed inside. When they saw Willow collapsed on the floor with a knife embedded in her back and blood pouring out nonstop, their expressions instantly darkened. Hurry, get her to the hospital. Makoto was subdued by the police on the spot. Corporate espionage combined with attempted murder. He was destined to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Within just a few hours, the entire financial world erupted into chaos. The Liu family, Wang family, and Su family suddenly joined forces and launched a brutal attack on the Lin family's stock market. The Lin family was completely unprepared. All of their liquid funds had already been invested into the Liu Corporation, leaving them utterly powerless to resist. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of billions in market value evaporated before their eyes. Maria Lin was so furious she nearly fainted. She screamed wildly at her subordinates. Damn it, didn't I tell you to monitor the Liu Corporation from every angle? Why am I only hearing now that Willow joined forces with the Wang and Su families? What the hell is going on? Investigate it immediately. The secretary looked miserable. On the verge of tears. President Lin, we've been following your instructions the entire time. Willow was far too cautious. The only person who could get close to her was Makoto. Should we? Maria Lin's heart suddenly skipped a beat as realization struck her, and her face instantly turned deathly pale. Could it be that Willow had discovered Makoto's identity as a corporate spy? How many of the Lin family's core secrets did he know? What if, at that thought, cold sweat instantly broke out across her forehead. She hurriedly pulled out her phone with trembling hands and dialed Makoto's secret number, but the call went unanswered. Her expression shifted repeatedly before she finally grabbed her phone and booked a plane ticket, wanting only to flee immediately. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Bang. The secretary rushed into the office in a panic, face pale as paper. President Lin, the police are here. They said they must see you immediately. Maria Lin's body trembled violently. Find a way to stop them, quickly. The moment she finished speaking, she exploded with astonishing speed and sprinted toward the underground garage. But the instant she stepped out of the elevator, she was caught by the police waiting there. The officers pulled out an arrest warrant and spoke sternly. Maria Lin, you have been accused of tax evasion and trafficking state secrets. Come with us. The blood drained completely from Maria Lin's face. Pale and lifeless, she was dragged away by the police. As news of Maria's arrest spread, reports of the complete collapse of the Lin family instantly shot to the top of trending searches, detonating across the internet. Makoto was imprisoned. The Lin family, the Liu family's longtime enemy, had fallen. Yet Willow, lying in the hospital bed, felt no happiness whatsoever. She had just received news that Makoto Ito's parents had taken the 3 children and gone to England. Judging from the situation, they were going there to cause trouble for George. Ignoring the injury on her back, Willow forced herself to book the earliest flight to England. This time, she absolutely would not allow George to be hurt ever again. Chapter 24. In England, I looked at the 3 boys brought over by the Ito family, my expression dark to the extreme. Makoto's parents dropped to their knees with a loud thud. Instantly, all the surrounding media cameras turned toward them in unison, the sounds of shutters clicking non-stop. Makoto's mother cried bitterly as she wailed. Mr. Wang, please be merciful and spare our Makoto. She deliberately raised her voice louder and louder. You're powerful, wealthy, and highly respected. Why do you insist on targeting my son? Besides, as the father of these 3 children, how can you heartlessly abandon them? The moment those words came out, the reporter's eyes lit up instantly, and the camera flashes became even more frantic. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed someone in the crowd live streaming with a phone, and my temples throbbed violently. Passers-by who knew nothing about the truth immediately began criticizing me. Oh my God, George abandoned his wife and children. What a scumbag. TSK. Abandoning even his own sons for a new lover. That's truly cold-hearted. My face darkened as my sharp gaze swept over the 3 boys. Elias, Ivan, Santino, I'll give you one final chance. Come stand beside me, and I won't pursue what happened today. The 3 boys trembled violently at my words and instinctively tried to stand up, only to be forcefully held down by Makoto's parents. The old couple whispered threats into the children's ears. Makoto is your biological father. He's fallen into trouble now. If you ignore him, how are you any different from animals? The boys' faces turned pale as they lowered their heads helplessly. I frowned deeply before suddenly letting out a cold laugh. So you've decided to use these 3 children to threaten me? Makoto's parents smiled hypocritically. Mr. Wang, you misunderstand. These children are sensible and know right from wrong. This is entirely their own decision. They were convinced that as long as they controlled the children, I would inevitably compromise. Even while being publicly threatened, my expression remained unusually calm. I looked deeply at the 3 boys. If this had been my previous life, when I still knew nothing of the truth, then perhaps their threats might have worked. But now, tell me, I said calmly, what exactly do you want? Makoto's parents exchanged smug glances. Makoto's father raised his voice loudly. We want you to immediately stop targeting the Lin family and make a will naming Elias, Ivan, and Santino as heirs to all of the Wang family's assets. The moment his words fell, the entire scene erupted into an uproar. The crowd instantly began whispering among themselves. So after all this, they're here to fight over the inheritance. But honestly, they are his children. It's normal to leave the family fortune to them, isn't it? Now it depends on whether President Wang agrees. All eyes immediately focused on me, waiting for my answer. My expression remained calm and unreadable. After a long silence, I clearly spoke several words. I refuse. Rage instantly flashed through Makoto's father's eyes. He immediately raised his voice again and cried dramatically toward the cameras around him. Everyone, listen to this. Is that something a father should say? When he divorced, he only took the daughter with him so he could remarry Anna. Now that he's found a new lover, he'd rather give the family fortune to outsiders than leave even a fraction to his sons. How can there be such an irresponsible father in this world? His voice cracked with tears, his performance so emotional it almost looked genuine. The surrounding discussions rose again, and many people began sympathizing with the 3 boys. Yet in the very next second, they were never my fiancé's children to begin with. Why should he give his fortune to outsiders? A cold female voice suddenly rang out. At some point, Anna had already appeared by my side. Her sharp gaze swept across everyone present, and the noisy scene instantly fell silent. Or, she continued coldly, are you all trying to morally blackmail my fiancé just because you outnumber him? Under her overwhelming presence, the crowd unconsciously lowered their eyes, but very quickly, someone caught the key point in her words. The 3 boys were not my children. Makoto's mother immediately jumped up to refute her, waving the documents in her hand as she screamed. George, how dare you say these 3 boys aren't your biological sons? I have their birth certificates right here. The father's name clearly has your name written on it. You're denying your own flesh and blood just to marry into the Su family. Can your conscience really handle that? I paid no attention whatsoever to the birth certificates in her hand. Instead, I calmly turned toward Attorney Chan behind me and gave a slight nod. Take it out. Chapter 25. Attorney Chan immediately understood my meaning. In front of everyone, he calmly pulled out 3 documents from his briefcase. We have here 3 DNA test reports, he announced, which are enough to prove that the biological father of these 3 children is not Mr. George Wang. Makoto's parents instantly turned deathly pale. Their lips trembled as they tried to argue back. These are fake. Whether they're fake or not can be verified easily. Expressionless, Attorney Chan took out another 3 reports. These are DNA reports comparing the children with Makoto Ito. The probability of biological relation is as high as 99%. The moment his words fell, he operated the projector equipment on site and publicly displayed a long-hidden surveillance video. In the footage, Makoto, wearing a mask, sneaked suspiciously into the laboratory. Taking advantage of the medical staff's distraction, he secretly swapped 2 test tubes labeled with names. I looked down coldly at the 3 boys collapsed on the ground, my voice filled with exhaustion. I took care of you with everything I had for 7 years, but what about you? You helped Makoto threaten me without even the slightest trace of gratitude. I slowly shook my head. You've disappointed me deeply. Afterward, I signaled Attorney Chan to upload all the evidence simultaneously onto the Wang Corporation's official public account. If anyone has doubts, I said calmly, you're free to verify everything online. Every link in the chain of evidence is complete and publicly traceable. A collective gasp immediately rippled through the crowd. People hurriedly pulled out their phones and opened the posts, the glow of their screens reflecting onto their stunned faces as discussions exploded everywhere. Oh my God, Makoto actually switched the test tubes and tricked George into raising someone else's children. No wonder President Wang only took the daughter when he left. Those 3 sons were never his biological children. The Ito family is absolutely disgusting. Not only did they deceive him into marriage, they even framed him. This completely destroys my worldview. Right at that moment, an enraged female voice suddenly rang out, you beasts. At some point, Willow had pushed through the crowd. She rushed toward the 3 boys and slapped each of them several times across the face. "Who allowed you to come here and cause trouble?" she shouted furiously. The 3 boys covered their cheeks and stared at her in disbelief, tears instantly spilling from their eyes. "Mom." But Willow merely swept a cold glance over them before violently throwing a document onto the ground. It was the DNA test between her and the 3 boys. In the conclusion section, the words, "biological relationship excluded," were written clearly. "Don't call me mom, you're not worthy of it." With the truth fully exposed, the 3 boys collapsed into sobs. In less than half an hour, the topic, Wong family's 3 young masters confirmed unrelated to either parent, surged to the top of global trending searches like a thunderstorm. The comment sections were instantly flooded by furious netizens. Under the protection of bodyguards, I walked toward the company building. Willow hurried after me, trying to follow, only to be blocked outside by the guards. "George!" she screamed through the wall of people. "I know I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. During this time, I've reflected every single day. I never should have hurt you because of some ridiculous sense of gratitude, and I never should have let Makoto manipulate me into creating so many misunderstandings. But I simply asked, can you honestly say that you never felt even the slightest attraction toward Makoto?" I stopped walking and turned to look at her, my gaze calm and steady. Willow's throat tightened as though something were lodged inside it. No sound came out for a long time before she finally spoke with a trembling voice. "I'm sorry. Please, can you give me one more chance?" Before she could even finish speaking, she suddenly dropped to her knees with a loud thud, choking back sobs. She pleaded, "As long as you're willing to forgive me, I'll do anything. I swear it." I smiled faintly. It's too late to say sorry now. My voice carried no hatred anymore, only relief. I already have someone I love. After saying that, I turned and walked toward Anna, who had been quietly standing not far away, and stopped in front of her. "She is my fiancée, and the woman I've chosen to love." Then I looked back at Willow and said each word slowly and clearly. "You should leave. I don't want to see you ever again." Chapter 26. Willow's outstretched hand slowly fell back down helplessly, but she did not leave. Instead, she stood guard outside the company like a statue, her eyes fixed stubbornly on the direction of the executive elevator. As employees passed by, they could not help whispering among themselves while pointing at her. "So that's President Wong's ex-wife. Looks like she really regrets everything now. What's the point of regretting it? She treated President Wong so cruelly back then. Who is she trying to fool with this fake devotion now?" Exactly. Miss Su treats President Wong incredibly well. Not only is she attentive in daily life, but she keeps bringing major business deals to the company one after another. I heard the 2 of them are getting married in a week. By then, Anna will officially become Mrs. Wong. She's just an ex-wife now. What's she even doing standing here? Every word stabbed into Willow like needles. For someone as proud as her, the humiliation was unbearable. Yet she still refused to leave. Only after the sky had completely darkened and every employee had gone home did she finally depart unwillingly. But she did not give up. Before long, she discovered the address of my villa in England and drove straight there. The moment she stepped out of the car, however, the scene at the entrance of the courtyard completely shattered her sanity. I was lowering my head to kiss Anna. Moonlight poured over the 2 of us, the picture so warm and intimate that it was painfully dazzling. "What are you doing?" Willow rushed forward like a madwoman, startled. I frowned the instant I saw it was her. "What are you doing here?" I asked coldly. Anna, however, slowly pressed her lips together as though savoring the lingering warmth of the kiss. Then she wrapped her arm around mine and looked up at Willow calmly. "Miss Liu, being intimate with my fiancé has nothing to do with you, does it? Logically speaking, when you walk into a scene like this, you should be the one avoiding it." Willow's face turned purple with rage. Suppressing her anger with difficulty, she stepped in front of me, her eyes filled with pleading. "George, I've completely cut ties with Makoto. Every connection between us is gone. Please stop being angry with me. Okay, come back to my side. I promise that for the rest of my life, I'll never fail you again." Faced with her remorse, I merely shook my head calmly. I was no longer the naive young man from years ago who could be softened by a few sweet words. The betrayals from both my previous life and this one had already made me see Willow's true nature clearly. "I already told you," I said quietly. "Everything between us ended a long time ago. I'm getting married very soon. Please stop disturbing my life." Rejected once again. A thin layer of tears appeared in Willow's eyes as she choked out another plea. "George, for Emma's sake, can't you give me one more chance? As long as you agree, I'm willing to transfer every asset under my name to Emma. Consider it compensation for you and our daughter. Please." Willow had always been proud, someone who valued her status and dignity above all else. Yet in order to win me back, she had already lowered herself to kneel before me the first time we met again. And now, she was even offering to transfer all of her property to our daughter. It was obvious that she truly regretted everything, but love was gone. No matter how much she did, my heart no longer stirred in the slightest. To make Willow completely give up, I deliberately wrapped an arm around Anna's waist, lowered my head, and kissed her red lips directly. A flicker of surprise crossed Anna's face at first, but soon warmth filled her eyes as she passionately returned the kiss. George, you. Willow's eyes nearly split apart in fury. With my actions, I delivered the cruelest possible blow. I gave her no further chance to cling to me. Taking Anna's hand, I turned and walked into the villa before slamming the door shut behind us, cutting that despairing figure off outside completely. Willow remained standing there like an abandoned stray dog, pitiful and helpless. At some point, a light drizzle began falling from the sky. Rain soaked through her clothes as cold winds slipped beneath the fabric, wrapping icy chill around every inch of her body. Yet she seemed completely numb to it all. She only stared blankly up at the second-floor window. Through the hazy curtains, she could clearly see two overlapping figures leaning against each other, warm and intimate like a painting. At that moment, her heart felt as though it had been frozen solid, completely cold. Chapter 27. The next morning, I got up and headed to the company as usual. But halfway there, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. After I hung up, the other party quickly sent another message. The moment I opened it, a photo of Emma sleeping in bed appeared on the screen, and sitting beside my daughter was Willow. My expression changed instantly, and I immediately called back. Willow, where did you take my daughter? Willow's hoarse voice came through the receiver. George, Emma is my daughter too. Is it wrong for me to take her out to spend some time together? I did not believe a single word of her nonsense. The unease in my chest only grew stronger. Sure enough, her tone suddenly shifted. George, it's been a long time since our family ate together, hasn't it? I really miss those days when we sat around the dining table together. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening around the phone. Send me the address, I said through gritted teeth. I'm coming right now. The moment the call ended, she sent over a location pin. I sharply turned the steering wheel and sped toward the suburban address as fast as possible. The destination was a secluded villa, but the moment I stepped through the door, I froze. The decoration and furnishings inside the villa were identical to the old Liu family mansion back in China. George, you came. Holding Emma in her arms, Willow slowly walked down the staircase. The moment Emma saw me, her eyes instantly reddened. Daddy. She struggled desperately to run toward me, but her body was limp and powerless, unable to move at all. The fear in her eyes grew even stronger. I demanded furiously. What did you do to Emma? She's your biological daughter. Willow looked at me with sorrowful eyes. Don't worry, I won't hurt her. I just wanted us to have a family meal together. Why is everyone so resistant to it? Seeing the way she looked now, my expression darkened, and a deep sense of unease rose inside me. I instinctively tried to take out my phone and call for help, only to realize there was no signal at all. George, the food is ready. Come sit down. As though she had not noticed my small movement, Willow gently placed Emma into a dining chair. Then she thoughtfully pulled out the chair across from her, a faint smile lingering on her lips, but in my eyes, that smile only sent chills down my spine. Instead of sitting down, I quickly walked over to Emma and crouched beside her. Emma, does anything hurt? I asked softly. Emma's tiny body trembled slightly. Daddy, I can't move. Mommy gave me an injection, and now I don't have any strength left. As she spoke, she quickly glanced at Willow before lowering her voice so only I could hear. Daddy, Mommy is really scary. You should run away. I gently patted my daughter's head and subtly nodded, signaling for her not to be afraid. Come, let's eat. Willow carried over the dishes, smiling gently as she placed food onto our plates, perfectly playing the role of a loving wife and caring mother, as though this truly were nothing more than a warm family dinner. Looking at my daughter's pale face, I knew I could not provoke Willow right now. Suppressing the fury in my chest, I expressionlessly picked up a slice of lettuce, but just before I could put it into my mouth, bang! The villa doors were violently kicked open. Don't eat it, the food is poisoned. Chapter 28. Following Elias's sudden shout, my hand trembled, and the lettuce between my chopsticks fell onto the table. I turned toward the voice and saw the three boys rushing into the room drenched in sweat, panic written all over their faces. Gasping for breath, Elias shouted. The food here has been drugged by the Ito family. Don't touch anything. Willow's expression changed instantly as well. She had never imagined that the Ito family would actually dare attack them, not even sparing the children. Now that the truth had been exposed, Makoto's parents slowly stepped out from the shadows of the kitchen, glaring viciously at the three boys. Through gritted teeth, they snarled. Makoto was right. You really are ungrateful little ingrates. We should have poisoned you little bastards first back then. Suppressing their fear, the three boys instinctively moved to shield Emma and me behind them. Elias's face was filled with guilt, his voice trembling with tears. Dad, I'm sorry. Only after you left did we realize that the only person who truly cared about us was you. To stop Mom from going to find you, Makoto used our identities to threaten us. He even deliberately terrified us until we developed high fevers and passed out. Choking with sobs, Elias poured out all the grievances he had been holding inside. Ivan continued. Later, he was afraid we'd expose the truth, so he sent us to boarding school and completely stopped caring whether we lived or died. Then Santino pointed furiously at Makoto's parents. They forcibly brought us to England. They beat and cursed us and forced us to lie in front of reporters. After Makoto went to prison, they completely lost their minds. They said they wanted to kill all of you and then control us so they could inherit the family fortune. The three boys suddenly rolled up their sleeves. Dark bruises and overlapping wounds covered their arms in horrifying patterns. Tears streamed down their faces as they shouted together. We can't keep making mistakes anymore. Even if it costs us our lives, we'll protect you. Holding Emma tightly in my arms, I looked at the three boys with indescribably complicated emotions. There was shock, there was sorrow, but no longer any emotional attachment. Makoto's parents had already lost patience completely. With a violent wave of his hand, Makoto's father shouted, "Do it." The moment he gave the order, several thugs holding machetes rushed out from both sides and surrounded us completely. 2 fists could not fight against 4 hands, much less against armed attackers while most of us were children. Even though we fought desperately, we still fell into a disadvantage. The 3 boys quickly received several deep wounds during the struggle, blood soaking through their clothes. Just as a blade swung toward me, Willow suddenly lunged forward. Slash! The sharp knife hacked directly into her back, and blood instantly sprayed everywhere. Yet she still forced herself to turn around, pulling out a faint smile as though trying to reassure the children not to be afraid. Everything happened too fast. All I felt was warmth splashing across my face. I watched as Willow slowly collapsed onto the floor, and for a moment, my mind went completely blank. At that exact moment, another machete swung toward us. Instinctively, I wrapped myself around Emma protectively and shut my eyes in despair. Bang, bang, bang. Several gunshots suddenly rang out. The thugs collapsed one after another. I abruptly opened my eyes and saw Anna rushing inside with the police, terror still lingering across her face. "George, are you all okay?" she shouted anxiously. The tension hanging over my heart instantly disappeared. My body finally relaxed as relief flooded through me. We were saved. I'm fine. I raised my hand and wiped the blood from the corner of my eye. "This blood belongs to Willow." As I spoke, I reached out with trembling fingers toward Willow's nose. The moment I felt that faint trace of breathing, I secretly let out a breath of relief and shouted to the nearby police officers. "She's still breathing. Hurry and get her to the hospital." Even if I no longer loved her, I had never wanted her to die in front of me. Seeing the situation turn against them, Makoto's parents tried to quietly escape during the chaos, but Elias spotted them immediately and pointed while shouting, "They're trying to run. Catch them." In the end, the 2 were still pinned to the ground by police officers and handcuffed on the spot. Anna tightly held my hand and said softly, "Don't worry, I'll make them pay the most painful price possible." Chapter 29. When Willow woke up, she was already lying in a hospital bed, looking at the empty room around her. Bitterness unconsciously spread through her mouth. After experiencing life and death, she finally understood something. Perhaps staying out of each other's lives was the best proof of her love for me. At that moment, the hospital room door was pushed open. A flicker of light appeared in Willow's watery eyes, but when she realized it was the 3 boys, that light dimmed once more. She let out a self-mocking laugh. Even now, what exactly was she still hoping for? The 3 boys glanced timidly at Willow on the hospital bed. "Mom, we came to see you." Willow nodded gently and motioned for them to come closer. Seeing that she did not reject them, the 3 little boys hurried over in surprise. Looking at them quietly, Willow suddenly asked, "Do you still want to live with me?" The 3 boys exchanged worried glances, each seeing the same fear reflected in the other's eyes. "Mom, even though we're not your biological children, are you still willing to accept us?" Their eyes were filled with nervousness as they waited for her answer. During this period of time, they had experienced far too much. The once arrogant little young masters had matured considerably. Willow smiled faintly. "Even if I'm not your biological mother, I still carried you for 10 months and gave birth to you." Before coming to England, she had already prepared herself to send the boys to an orphanage. But after surviving the brush with death, facing these children who had finally awakened to their mistakes, the resentment in her heart suddenly disappeared. In many ways, they were so alike. All of them had hurt the person who loved them the most, and all of them were now consumed by regret. Perhaps because of that shared sorrow, her gaze toward them softened considerably. "But," she said quietly, "you have to promise me something. When you grow up, protect Emma well." The 3 boys nodded solemnly. "Emma is our little sister. We'll definitely protect her." The day Willow was discharged from the hospital happened to be the day of my wedding. She stood quietly in a corner of the wedding venue with the 3 boys, personally watching as I placed the ring onto Anna's finger. When the bells announcing the completion of the ceremony rang out, she suddenly smiled with relief. "George," she whispered softly, "I wish you happiness." Willow did not stay long. Instead, she quietly took the 3 boys by the hand and silently left. As though sensing something, I instinctively looked toward the direction where they had departed, but there was already no one there. "George, it's time to kiss the bride." "All right." Smiling faintly, I lowered my head and pressed a precise kiss against Anna's red lips. Cheers instantly erupted throughout the venue as the wedding came to a perfect conclusion. The next day, I received a letter. It had been left behind by Willow. I opened the envelope. At the top, it read, "To George, George, by the time you open this letter, I will already have returned to China with the 3 children. I'm sorry for all the trouble I caused you during this time. Seeing how happily you're living now is enough for me. From now on, I'll never trouble you again. Please forgive my past recklessness and ignorance. I've already received my punishment, abandoned by everyone around me. In the future, I'll raise the 3 children properly and make sure they never walk the same path I did. For the rest of your life, I hope you'll always be happy. Willow." After reading the letter, I fell silent for a long time, until Emma suddenly skipped happily to my side, then pulled out a bouquet of flowers from behind her back. "Tada, Daddy, surprise. This is my wedding gift for you. Do you like it?" I accepted the flowers and gently rubbed the top of her head. "Of course I like it. Thank you, sweetheart." Not far away, Anna walked over wearing an apron and carrying a plate of pastries. Noticing my gaze, she smiled warmly. "I just experimented with a new pineapple cake recipe. I'm not sure if it suits your tastes, so hurry and try it." The warmth of ordinary life was the most comforting thing in the world. Happiness, it turned out, could be this simple. The sweet and sour flavor instantly conquered my taste buds. A gentle breeze drifted by. The letter I had casually left on the table fluttered into the sky. I did not even spare it another glance. Instead, I kept praising my wife's cooking skills, and at that moment, time itself seemed to stand still.